Present.
Greg Gordon, present.
Kelly Law, present.
Jessica Smuin, present.
Lon Lot, present.
Okay, thank you. And we will have a prayer by Lon Lot.
Our Heavenly Father, we are grateful to Thee this day for the moisture Thou hast sent to us. We're grateful for the opportunity to come together and work as a community in deciding factors that will help us live together peaceably. We pray, Father, for those who have suffered from loss in the difficult situations throughout the world. We pray for leaders of nations to come to solutions to the difficulties that go on within these countries. We pray that we may have meaningful, open, and civil dialogue this evening, that all will be edified by the words that will be spoken. And we pray for these things in Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Okay, and we'll have a pledge led by Kelly Law. Is that better?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and we will move on to item 2, which is the work session. But before we start with the work session, I just wanted to make an announcement. If anyone wants to make a comment during public comment, there are comment cards out there that we'd like you to fill out. And if you can turn it into, where's Austin? Austin or Bonnie would be great. Okay, so we are on item A on the work session, which is the budget.
Okay, there wasn't anything in the packet for this, but I put some information in front of you tonight. So it's taken a little bit longer this year to bring some things together and working on the budget. But you know, there's a large item with our increase that we're looking at in public safety that we needed to get ironed out and nail our portion down, which we finally got that last week. And we usually don't have all the grant opportunities that are floating around right now, and we've been pretty busy trying to get those put together and meeting those deadlines, which can affect our budget in a different way, I guess. So I just listed some things out here that I wanted to just discuss for a minute and get a little bit of general direction from the council, so that we can get our tentative budget document put together that will be before the council in May. And then we'll have another, actually about 6 weeks between our tentative budget and when we'll adopt the final budget at the second meeting in June. So first on the list, looking at some general fund priorities. All of the council and the mayor have met with Nathan from Highland and I and the chiefs to look at the public safety budgets. So these are the numbers that will be on the tentative budget that will be before the Lone Peak board tomorrow morning at their board meeting. For Alpine City, the increase in police, and this is primarily increases in wages to deal with the conditions we're seeing right now. Our increase for police is just under 178,000. So that's about 14.5% up from last year. And then I have our total in parentheses there for police. Fire's up about 89,310, approximately 8%. With the total being just under 1.2 million. Administration, for those of you that don't know, on the administration side, there's just a portion of a couple of employees at Highland City. A portion of their wages comes from Lone Peak, and they take care of those responsibilities on top of what they do at Highland City. So it's not a huge expense there, but it seems to work out well. So that increase is just a little over 4,000 or 4.6%. Our total is 93,000. So our total Lone Peak cost that will be presented tomorrow on the tentative budget is 271,249. So that's about 11.2% increase. With our total being 2.68 million. So, like I said, most of that's due to wages. Almost all, right? There's just a little bit that's not. And that's every city's dealing with this right now. And not just in police and fire, it's everywhere with the low unemployment, and they experience different things than we do with our other city employees because of things that have happened in the last couple of years. So we'll get through the rest of this general fund stuff, and then we'll talk about how to fund that. So then on the city side of things, what we're seeing out there is 8 to 9% inflation over the last 12 months. There's just a report that came out this morning. I saw it on the news, and I actually found it and gave you a copy. Just for the last month, things are up 1.2% for the month of March. It's kind of crazy. So it's not finished, but we're working on kind of a proposal for some kind of short term, and then for the next budget year adjustments to address that. A lot of cities did a mid-year adjustment because of inflation, and some of them are even already anticipating potentially another if things keep going the way they are right now. So we'll bring that back. One thing I'm finding is it's really hard comparing like positions from one city to the next. You know, the information that's available, sometimes you don't know how long they've been there. Maybe they've been there 9 months or 6 months, or you don't know for sure what responsibilities they have. It's just a little bit challenging. It's not I don't feel like it's an apples to apples comparison to just look at a title from one city to the next. So we're working on that, and that will be, I plan to have that for the next meeting. We did get our insurance numbers. They're actually lower than what I anticipated. I had just put a kind of a plug-in number of 8% for medical, 2% for dental. It came in at 5.8% and 1%. So I was happy about that. And then projects that come from the general fund, things like our trails, work on trails. If we were to build pickleball courts or anything related to parks, cemetery, any kind of like beautification type projects, those things would all come from the general fund, and even some street projects. So on a year like this, where we have all these other increases, I mean, my recommendation would be that we, do what's necessary. And then if we have the money, do the projects that maybe weren't absolutely necessary, but would be great to have. So we'll be, as we've had the big spreadsheet in the past, we'll have projects and where the money would come from and all of that to the next meeting. So along those same lines, and we've been doing a lot of this lately, look at grants for some of these projects. Like I know there's grants out there that we haven't ever went after for Main Street beautification. There's one that we actually just became aware of, and I think it was because our population got to a certain point. Do you remember, Austin, that I sent you some information? We just hit a threshold because we never even heard of it before. And it was a good opportunity, but you have to do some work in advance. You have to meet certain requirements to be able to apply for it. So it's not something that you could just meet them, take care of it in a month. It's like a little bit longer process, maybe over a year plus, to get some things in order. Some of them require committees or something like that, to show that the one I'm thinking of in particular, you had to show that you really take an interest in your downtown and your Main Street area and are dedicated to improving it and making it better. So I think.
Yeah, it takes like a lot of legwork that you have to do up front, and it was based on like a class. So they classify cities like class 1, class 2, class 3. And so we've moved up a class, and that's what it is.
That's what it was, yes. So Austin has some information on that. So that's something that we probably should get started on,
Yeah.
so that we can qualify for those types of things in the
Austin,
future.
let's meet about that as soon as possible so we can get all our ducks in a row so we can start applying for those. That would be fantastic.
Okay. And then in the mix of this, we've talked about the fire station. We're trying to get that all going. The plan there was to take a portion of our sales tax and bond against it to fund the fire station. So I only bring this up because we just have to remember that that money's already being used for something, whether it's another project or whatever. So going forward, that would be a dedicated portion of those funds, those revenues for that project.
Two scenarios. Can we have the scenario that you're speaking of bonding against the sales tax, but then also just, I don't know, the category would be just a bond that only addresses that?
Yeah. So Craig can probably explain this better than I, but if you do a general obligation bond like property tax, it has to go on the ballot.
Okay,
And so it's a longer process to make that happen. So it can.
but then we get into the timing and trying to accomplish things as we're hitting this
Right.
increase in costs.
Yep. So this
Okay.
would be a revenue bond,
Okay.
dealing with the sales tax as the revenue source. So, and it's a common way to go.
Okay,
It's the most common way to go.
Yes.
There are very few general obligation bonds. School districts principally have done those recently, building buildings. I think Alpine district did that a number of years ago. The difference between a geo bond and a revenue bond is point difference. Property tax is a much more secure revenue source than a sales tax.
So that's what we were looking at for the fire station. So with all this, I guess on the general fund side, whatever excess that we've had at the end of the year in our general fund has just went into our capital improvements fund. And that's how we've built projects throughout the city, whether it be parks or trails or even some other street projects. Part of it has came from there. If we want to continue to do that, then we may need to have an increase in property taxes to make up that difference.
we also have that wrap tax that I know, again, that's in a couple of cycles. It's not this year,
Yeah. Yeah, and it would generate a little bit. Was it 100,000 or something?
probably
Yeah,
about that.
and that could help with maybe some ongoing maintenance or, something like that.
So what is the anticipated amount that we would be paying for the bond for the firehouse per year? Is it?
I have that, but I'll have to find it in my email real
That's okay.
quick. I think I had them look at it on like I think it was 20 years or 15 or 20 years, but I want to say it was like a couple $100,000
Okay.
a year, but when we get on to another item, I'll find that and let you know later in the meeting. So, I mean, for Alpine, a lot of cities bond all the time. We haven't. I have a project list from probably clear back to 95 that I need to update, but it was like probably $20 million worth of projects that we've done with no bonding. And so we've done it. It hasn't really hurt anybody in a big way. And we've improved our city, you know, basically from border to border. So if we want to continue to do that, we may need to have an increase. So I just need a little bit of direction, which way to go, and then I can kind of present the tentative budget accordingly.
So what are our options? We can't do a general bond because we're not, I mean,
Right.
it is an election cycle though, but are we not, does it have to be municipal election cycle or?
We've never done one, so I
It
don't
can be
know.
in a general election, and you can actually do it probably, I was gonna say primary in June, but most often the general obligation proposals are at the general election in November. That's the earliest.
I think so that would be a property tax increase. I think the simpler way would be if we were to do a property tax increase through our budget and truth in taxation and not go through an election process.
Oh, we can do that. Okay.
Yes.
I guess I was getting confused that we would have to do. Okay.
Yeah, and we did that couple, 2 or 3 years ago when Cedar Hills left the Public Safety District.
No, you're right.
So basically in that process, the council approves the budget, but it's kind of subject to the truth in taxation, which takes place in August. So your budget's kind of finalized, but not really until
Until
that
goes
takes
through.
place at that
Okay.
time. So I think, I'm not sure which direction our neighbors in Highland are going. Have you guys heard recently? In the past, they've done fees, which our attorneys have always told us
Yeah.
go a different direction than that. So
So are you saying you want to know whether we want to do,
basically the question is, are we willing to do less projects to either have a lesser tax increase or I don't know if I could say at this point, no tax increase, but
yeah, I mean, realistically, so just that, so that people understand why there's been a significant increase in the public safety district budget. Cities in Utah County announced last year a significant increase to their salaries. And when that happened, you saw kind of people scrambling. And of course, when you hear 17-20% difference in your pay, they're willing to leave. And so to help retain our force, our police force already is quite young. We do have some sergeants that are out there, but a lot of our patrollers, from what I understand, are quite young. And to even try to retain those, that we had to raise our salaries to stay competitive. And so that's why we're going through this process. And I think in a year where unemployment is really low, and you have police officers making not much more than 18-year-olds working at Walmart, it just didn't, it's not great. We appreciate our safety district, our police and fire are fantastic. We want them to stick around. It's advantageous for us to retain our employees, mainly because it's cheaper to keep them than to train somebody new. And I'd rather have a well-seasoned, experienced people protecting our city. And so that's the route that we're going. So that's why we're having this discussion. Me personally, I know I don't get to vote, but I would like to continue the projects that we have outlined and to be able to go at that rate. I don't feel like we as a city are extravagant in the projects that we have outlined and why it's pretty bare boned. And so to, you know, to cover this at the cost of, you know, cutting down, whether it's improving our water systems or our roads, to me, it doesn't make sense. I don't know if we have much of a choice other than to raise taxes. I know that's not popular, but
So Shane, on this worksheet you have here, are these projected water projects here? You
Yeah,
have
so
the 400 to 500,000.
So we can go through this, won't take very long to finish through that. So streets, part of the streets. Well, the 700, we've spent about 700,000 last, or this current budget year on just street maintenance. That's overlays, chip seals, seal coats, some concrete replacements and things like that. Years prior, we spent 400,000 to 500,000. But costs were going up, and to get approximately the same work done, maybe a little bit more, because we had the addition of the transit tax on top of the Class C road funds. That money is dedicated for roads and sidewalks and things like that. So we bumped that up in this budget year, you know, to try to stay on top of our roads. So that really doesn't affect everything above the streets item. When we do a project like 800 South or Pioneer Drive or something like that, like the Grove Drive project that we're kind of working towards, sometimes some of that money would come from the general fund. The way we do it, we can take money from the Class C road funds for that project, but we probably don't want to go a year and not do any overlays and get behind. So it would be kind of a mix. So there could be some effect with more of a major street improvement project like that. Water, it really comes from its own fund. And this is just kind of replacements, so we don't get behind in our infrastructure. The last, I don't know, several years, we've spent $400,000 to $500,000 on just a selected project on like an aging water line. And we plan to do the same thing this year. Sewer, our sewer system really doesn't have any major deficiencies. So right now, there's just some little projects here or there, and to help ease the pain on and the costs on street improvement projects, you know, like when we lower manholes or something like that, we take the money from the sewer because it's a sewer manhole. But no major projects there. Pressure irrigation, we just adopted our capital improvement plan, and it's pretty aggressive to keep up with the demand on the water system. And as part of the pressure irrigation rate study, Lewis and Young has taken that plan that's now adopted and kind of implemented that in, and they'll have some recommendations on, they'll include kind of some bonding costs, because likely we'll have to bond for some of those improvements because they're so significant. And we plan to bring that PI rate study to the next council meeting. That's what we're looking at right now. And part of that, I listed the new well because it's something that we've talked about, and I've talked about anyway, or suggested that maybe we take some of our ARPA funds and put towards a new well to help kind of strengthen our irrigation system. And there's a lot of grants out there right now that are coming up for dealing with drought. I spent a couple days, most of the day last week, on a kind of a seminar where they went over a lot of these programs. So I think there's going to be some opportunities. Well, I know there is, and one right now is the Utah County ARPA grant that's due the 15th. And we've got 3 projects actually that we're applying for through that program. So hopefully we'll get at least one of them.
Are those all matching funds or are they
There's some
just?
matching funds in them. They didn't really have you need to have a 50% match. It was very loose. But I'm sure they look like everybody does to stretch their dollars. So if someone says we'll match versus someone that doesn't, I think you probably have a better opportunity to get the grant.
Okay.
We're applying for a grant for the PI well.
There is one program out there that I'm aware of through the Water Smart program that there's the potential there. It's a little bit, it messes with my mind a little bit because they're water conservation grants, but you're saying, hey, we're gonna use more water, so we need to drill a well. So I'm kind of thinking, how does that, but some of their kind of sub programs within that grant program is drought resiliency. And so drilling a well is a possibility, or rehabbing wells, which in our plans, we have projects in both the culinary and the pressure irrigation for that. So I think we'll go hard for those.
Where is the new storage tank? Is that a different category? It's not out of general fund?
That would actually be within the water. So that's one of the 3 grants we're applying to the county, is to help with that water tank.
Okay.
And so and that actually could have another source of funding through our water impact fees. So it could be some from our water fund, water impact fee fund, and hopefully some grant monies.
I mean, right now our tanks are full in there. And I
Yeah.
keep thinking if there was another 500,000 sitting
Yeah,
right there, it could
right.
just be captured.
Mhm. Yes, so we went into this one, I forgot what your question was.
Just wanting to understand this projected budget that we are going to be looking at here
Mhm.
versus what we have done in the past. And the increases mostly are in this public safety and the firehouse improvement.
That, and I would say wages in general.
Yeah, city staff as well.
Yeah.
And that is typically, we see that ongoing as we have cost of living increases throughout time.
Yeah.
So your question though, and Mayor pointed out that she wanted to keep going with some of the other project. I would like to personally see the list of those projects that we have, like we've done in the past, and I'm
Yeah.
sure you'll have that
We will.
presented. And the proposed budget, and see what kind of increase that we would need, or what kind of put on hold projects. But before I say one way or another, I'd like to see those.
Yeah, and the tentative budget, you're just accepting or adopting the tentative budget, and there's a lot of work. A lot of times they're presented, the budget doesn't even balance at that point. So and then there's 6 weeks to work on all the details and how it's gonna.
Yeah, and I know the last time we had this tax increase, 3 years ago,
I think so.
we hadn't had an increase for
Long time.
over 12
Mhm.
or something years, right?
Yeah,
So, and it seemed like significant increase the last time, yet it really wasn't on our portion. I know Alpine School District had a big increase at the same time. Utah County had a big increase at the same time. And we had a really insignificant portion of that tax increase.
Yeah.
That was really very justifiable, as is the things you're talking about right now. So I'm not opposed to looking at it that way, Mayor. So, but I'd like to see some of the other things that give us the options.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. I don't think any one of us go into it going, yeah, let's do another tax increase. But I think, as you mentioned, you have to recognize the significant things that cause that to happen, right? We had a third member of our safety district leave. And so obviously there's an imbalance in the budget there, and we had to rectify that. And then, who could have thought that something like this could have happened, right, in our recent history? And it's kind of a sticker shock for me personally to see these kind of increases, but at the same time, I feel like the safety of our public is of utmost importance. And I would, me personally, much rather have an experienced person in any of those situations than, because I mean, that's really what you're risking, right? If you don't do these increases, you're going to risk losing members of your force. And that's, I think we all realize that there, these are significant events that have caused it. It's not something that we're doing frivolously.
Right.
No, but I appreciate, I could see wanting to see the list and go from there.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Mayor, and I think we're down, I think it's something like 20% of our officers, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, a little bit more than that. Yeah, I mean, so anyway, I'm not sure. I mean, that's something we'll have to weigh, right? But how much are would the city want to reduce services or infrastructure maintenance? And we can see how the numbers work out, but with increases this much, it may be difficult.
Anybody else? Do you need?
I don't know if, I have just one more thing to mention on property tax. Many people don't realize that there's not a COLA built into property tax. So your tax rate is calculated by the state to give you the same revenue you had the year before plus new growth. So there's not a 3% or 4% or whatever factor built in to give you more revenue the next year. The only way you can increase that revenue is through a property tax increase. So I don't know, maybe at some point in time that will change, but that's the way it is right now.
So aside from Lon, does anyone have any specific direction that they want to express for Shane to help them which way to?
I'll just put my 2 cents in. And I also agree that you don't raise taxes ad hoc or just without thought, but there are times to do it. And we've done it before for specifically the cost increase for the police and fire. This would, I think, time this only to those administrative salary costs that are happening because of what's going on in the world. I would be probably in favor of looking at that as an option.
Do you need anything else from us?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Unless Jessica sent me a few items that she would like looked at, just some kind of small projects in the budget. Some might be a little larger. And if anyone has anything else, did you send me some, Greg?
I didn't.
It's probably the last year that we're still
think
working
so.
on. So if you have anything, don't hesitate to call me or send me an email or whatever, and we'll do what we can to work those in. So. Okay.
So can we move on to item B?
Yes.
Okay. Did you want to take that? Or who's?
So we've talked about the language on the plat in Three Falls that for the access that goes up to the upper water tank. And as I've, when the current plat that's recorded, there's been a few plat amendments because of little lot line adjustments and things like that. The current plat that's recorded predates Craig being here as our city attorney. And so we've been asked to look at this language and determine what it means. And as we discussed this, Craig suggested that we might want to have this as a short or long, whatever work session item to make sure what the intent of the language is. We have another plat amendment coming, just with some lot line adjustments that would involve this area. And so we want to make sure that we have our bases covered and we know what that language means and for us and the public and the lot owners involved.
And Shane, that's based on the change we made a few months ago. Is that the new plot you're talking about?
It was several months, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
the one that's
In the fall,
coming
I think.
has not been
Okay, this is a
canceled
new
yet.
one. Okay.
Yeah, so the language that's shown here on this cover sheet, let's see, on the original plat, it said 20-foot shared public access easement. On the most recently recorded plat, it says 20-foot public access easement in favor of Alpine City. So I guess we need direction on what the council believes was intended here, so that we can address this as this plat amendment moves forward, and we can talk to property owners. If they have any issues, then we can, work that out. And it will eventually come to city council for approval of that plat. So I know some of you have looked into this. I might have some information from past meetings and things, so.
So, yeah, when I saw this, I didn't remember the entire meeting, but I did remember a specific conversation between Jason Thielen and Will Jones. And this was in the April meeting. And hold on, let me see if I can. And in that discussion, we were talking about changing some public open space and private open space and moving those lines along. And Jason was talking about making sure that the citizens had access to the North Mountain, because it was basically being cut off because of the subdivision and private property, right? And our only access was this easement. And he kept mentioning, it's like, I want to make sure that people can get access to it. And Will had mentioned, and I pulled up the recording and I showed it to, or I had Shane listen to it. And Will mentioned that, you can drive on this road, which is, he was referring to the road or the easement to the water tank. And then Jason kept talking about, it's like, well, because he was saying that, the only way that people can really access that was from the bottom parking lot. And it was a long way to hike to just even start on the hike up to the Hemagogs or anywhere on the North Mountain. And so Will said, oh no, you can drive up there. There's a road there. And then Jason asked a little bit more about it. He's like, yeah, you can drive your cars up there. And Will said, I'd rather ride my mountain bike or walk, but you can drive your car up there. So to me, that's what stuck in my mind, was that was a public road. And then when we approved the plat, June of that year. So this is in 2020. So when we approved the plat in June of 2020, that's when we changed the wording, because in one part of the plat, it said it was a access easement. And then on the other part, it said it was a public access easement in favor of Alpine City. And then you had made the suggestion on the June 2020 meeting that we changed the wording so that it all said public, public access easement in favor of Alpine City. And that's what, at least the most recent plat that we're trying to record with the city, with all the private and public open space swaps, that's what it reads, and that's what was signed by the developers also.
And that plat is recorded.
Oh, it is
but
recorded? Oh,
There's, so the language 20-foot public access easement in favor of Alpine City is recorded on a plat right now. That's the most current
okay.
recorded document.
And that's what I thought.
Yeah.
And so for me, from the meetings from a couple of years ago, that, the developer said that we'd be able to drive on it, and Jason asked several times, and he said, yes, several times, that you can drive your car there. So to me, yeah, that we should be able to drive up there, that citizens should be able to go up there, up that road, and access that trailhead that's there. It might not be the best trailhead. I don't think a ton of people are going to be using it, but it is a trail that has been around for a long time. And I feel like we should be able to make it available to our citizens. Do you remember that meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember Craig I think Craig, you were at that meeting, and you were the one who gave us the exact wording on that. So again,
It was actually David Church.
oh, was it David Church? back
Yeah,
then?
I think it was
Church.
David. I was like,
Okay,
yeah, it was David.
so yeah, to your point, we have 2 accesses prior to this to the entire mountain up there. and they wanted to take one of the public open space and make it private. The give to get on this was, okay, we can do that for you, but we need to make sure on this other one, which already had an easement for the city to use it, for city vehicles, that we would add residents. And more than the ability to drive up there right now, it's the ability for the city to make the determination, if it wants to drive up there. I'm not saying that we would actually put a parking lot up there right now, but the whole intent with that discussion was, this is an access point for all citizens. Future city councils will have the right to determine how we want to best use that. To your point, it could be used for a small parking lot as people want to get up there and start hiking up the Hemicoggs, or it could continue to be used just as a hiking / biking. But the big point on this wording is that the city has the right to make that determination, and future city councils have the right to make that determination.
I think, let's say it's closed off there to motor vehicles. I assume people just go parking in that cul-de-sac, which wouldn't be preferred either. That said, we may want to cut it off anyway, right? But if we think there's some fire risk or something, but I think, you save 0.7 miles of vertical climb versus that Lehigh entrance, and hopefully we always have that through Lehigh, but that's kind of the other one, which again has, I think, 8 spots there, but it's an alternate route.
So in my mind, I don't think the walk-in, bike-in access was ever in question. I think it came down to, would the public be allowed to drive a motorized vehicle through that easement? At least in my mind, that was the question. So, and I didn't remember the details of that meeting. I remember parts of it. Usually I remember that stuff, but Carla pulled up the audio and I listened to it there. So,
And we were told that we would be able to drive. That's what I got from it.
Oh, and I think currently it's locked, right? There's a lock on it, so it's closed off.
yeah, we put that gate up there.
Yeah.
That said, people could go drive there today up to the gate, right? And it's a little trick, maybe depending on the car, hard to turn around or,
Yeah.
and it's one of these areas you may not want it open for the winter or something.
Mayor,
Yes.
excuse me. As far as giving access to the tank, then that, I'm assuming the tank's right at the top, right?
Yes.
After you go around, weave around on up. The concern always is with any of our facilities is the ease of access, giving access to vandalism to some of the property there. Because we would have personnel vehicles that would need to go up there no matter what in order to service the water facility. And we should always maintain that kind of access for sure. It has to be there. Sure.
And I don't think that part was in question either, the service vehicles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there when it says in favor of Alpine City, could that be somehow construed to mean only city employees versus public access? Is there, Craig?
I don't think it's just legal definition, but I think it'd be construed in favor of the entity, which is Alpine City, as they would determine how broad the access would be.
Well, I mean, wouldn't the difference be between where it says public in front of access, that if it were just saying access easement in favor of Alpine City, then it could be construed that way, but with the wording of public access, that to me means access to the public. That word was put in there specifically for that.
I don't think it's that broad. When I looked at it, what was it, 10 days ago, a couple of weeks ago, or staff meeting last week, I don't remember what it was. To me, that means public access in favor of Alpine City as determined by Alpine City. That's how I read it, and I've thought about it for the last few weeks, and that's what I would say it meant.
So whatever we decide then.
I think latitude is up to the city council and the mayor.
Okay. Okay, do we need to talk about anything else?
I think for us to work with, I'm not even sure who's submitting this plat amendment, but I know it's being worked on. I think we need to be able, as staff, to convey to them, you know, the city council feels like this would be for motorized vehicles for the general public or not. And then they could react to that.
Lon, what do you think?
Well, I think, again, there's not much room up there at all for parking. I mean, the tank, it goes up and it's steep and it winds up and you're there to the tank and you can barely get turned around up there at the tank. So I don't know why the public would need to be parked up that high anyway at the tank. So if there's a lower area, but it's really steep on almost every side as you move up there.
So who's been up there? I haven't been up there. I've seen pictures.
I've been up there.
Greg, have you been up there?
Yeah, and sure enough, it is kind of steep getting up to the tank. That probably wouldn't make sense. That's more just, there's parking for 2 or 3, right? Maybe in a big truck, but down at the bottom there, it's maybe a little flatter and there's maybe
Below
some-
the tank?
Yeah, just below. There's a hill right there.
Yeah.
And
it
that's
makes a
not-
Turn up, coming up the road and makes.
Yeah, and
So
there's kind
maybe-
of a trail that's only, I don't know, 30, I don't know, 50 feet up
So
there.
Lon, is
That's
that-
not even quite to the tank.
But that, yeah, that's, again, the gate's not much further down
Yeah.
from that. I mean, it's,
Yeah, we're talking 60 feet or so.
yeah,
I
it's
mean,
not much, I mean, it's
less than
there
that.
and people can still ride the bikes and.
How many-
bike and walk. and,
So how many people could park below the water tank?
well,
I
What do you
think
think?
in that little turnaround, is there a way you can pull it up on Google
I think
Maps? Because I
quite a
think in
few.
that
I mean,
lower,
it depends if you're going parallel. Now, there's kind of a
Probably
flat spot. You could
6.
probably get, I don't know,
6.
several kind of pointed out on the turn.
yeah.
Yeah, if you look here, down at the bottom to the
Yeah,
left
right
here,
there.
there's this sort of flat,
It's like a really-
some of this area.
So it's not,
steep.
it's not as big as what it looks on there.
No,
A lot of that
just
is a fill slope.
Just the turn.
Yeah.
Can I
Yeah,
touch it?
and there may be parallel parking. I mean,
Just
which is going to be kind of,
Just right in here, because this edge right here, it starts going downhill pretty
Yeah.
quick.
Mhm.
So
I
one
didn't
or
see
2
that,
cars?
so maybe it might be good to look, because I think it's a very slow that it could be used, so I'm not seeing the steepness coming off the side that you're talking about. I actually think you could stick, if you wanted to, 6 parking spots there.
I don't think you would ever need.
Not that
6
you would
up there.
want to, I'm saying even, but if you're asking if it's flat enough to, I don't think that's a problem at all.
So
Well,
about where
plus-
that yellow line is, I would say is the crest.
Yeah.
So what's up just to above it? That, is it a rock pile or what is that?
Oh,
Yeah.
You mean right there where I just
Yeah,
put it
and
out?
is
Yeah,
that-
that looks like just,
but it's
Is
it's
it, is that
temporary.
area flat or
Yeah,
is that, did we put,
That looks like
It's-
that. That's from Saturday. That looked as is flat.
oh, yeah. That's not bad.
How do I turn this on, Austin?
Click on the color and then you should get the music.
Yeah, it doesn't like my finger.
I mean, it's quite a bit.
Yeah, it is. It's a big area.
I mean, maybe you can draw it. Yours is working well. I would say it's roughly like that. Yep. I would say it's roughly like that. And then from that yellow line going down that long
Yeah,
bare
yeah,
area,
no,
that's
I-
all a fill slope. So it's like, it sits here and then it comes down like this.
no, and I know what you're talking about because that trail goes across it and you can look up and it is steep.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, all those lines you can see, those are the slope treatments to prevent erosion. So you know that's a sloped area.
Yeah.
So again, the gate is right.
It's down lower.
Just below the
Right,
trail.
right at the bottom there, I think, of this picture. Right
Can you
there.
move it up
Right,
a little
right where
bit?
the bottom of the picture is.
Austin, can you move
Yeah.
up the picture just a tiny bit?
See, I can't remember if
Oh.
the gate's above or below the trail, but it
It's
is right by the
below,
trail.
it's right below the trail.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's, oh, yeah, no, you're good.
But if it was to be open in general, I would suggest in drought years and high fire danger that
To
it not be allowed up there. I mean, if somebody's just out messing around and they decide that, and they could do this anywhere in the project, but decide
What
to,
if we do
flip it.
something similar to what we do with the poppies? That they come into the city if they, I mean, you're right, it's not that much further down, but how much in elevation do you think there is between that and to the upper? Because you said it was steep,
Yeah, well, so from where the gate is
yes.
to, that one's fairly gradual, still fairly gradual up to the turn, the hairpin turn.
And then it gets
Then
steep.
it, yeah, and both
Okay.
side, on that, it's up,
Mhm.
steep on the one side and steep down on the other side,
So are
all the
we,
way up to the tank.
so am I correct in assuming that we're gonna allow parking right up to the gate?
I think based on what Craig said, the city would
Can do whatever.
determine
Okay,
how broad, what would be allowed.
so what do you want from us? Do you want us to,
I think we just need to know what language to tell them to put on the plat, and then if they don't like it, they can react to that and we
okay.
can address that issue. I
Lauren,
don't
do you
think the
have a
lot lines
suggestion?
will be an issue. It's more the language.
And
So-
Mayor, is it, so, on that road, there's a lot, I mean, it's sort of wide. You could probably
Just
almost park parallel on a lot of it. So there's plenty of parking. The question is it down on the road, down in the cul-de-sac? Up at the top? It's kind of a question of where we want to
Direct. everyone?
direct and encourage people. to
Well, and I'm
park.
gonna guess
Um,
that if they do want to get up to the trailhead and head off, that's where they're gonna want to go up to.
Yeah.
That's
Probably-
where I would want to go up to.
Probably
but-
one other important thing, Austin, can you click on the yellow parcels for the aerial?
You can.
So the one other thing to remember is, let's see, the little strip, is that private? Is that common area or private open space?
This little strip right here,
Yeah.
Yes,
that is private.
yeah. And I think they have an agreement with the HOA that they be in lot, whatever that lot is in the middle. There, yeah, just kind of the middle of that private open space, to have a driveway off, kind of where the private open space strip intersects with the gravel or now recycled asphalt road. They plan to have a driveway into their property right there.
Can you point out where that comes off the road? Yeah.
Yeah, keep going, Austin, or whoever was drawing that.
Yeah, that was me. Maybe I'll zoom out
Oh, yeah.
so we can see the
The
cul-de-sac.
cul-de-sac, yeah. There you go.
So their driveway essentially is gonna come up and they would want to have a private access into their property like
It
that.
goes even further,
Or is it all the way up here?
roughly right there, yes.
So it's right here-ish.
Yeah.
So their driveway isn't coming from the cul-de-sac below where they actually have road frontage? In the cul-de-sac below, lower and to the left. That's the frontage road that they have for that lot.
But that lot on the plat, the original plat said shared driveway. It was shared for that lot.
So it was always the driveway was
Yes.
always gonna be from here.
So the main house would be that red square or rectangle. And then that would just be a long private, well, I guess it wouldn't be a private driveway, but it would be a driveway and then access into their.
So from the line that is 90 degrees to the access road up to where the trail crosses. That's kind of the distance that we have on that road to the gate, between private open space and the gate.
Which is like this area right here.
A little bit lower, yeah.
So Shane, what you're saying is that that section is, you know, the rest is just a access easement, but that's where someone in theory could
That's
legally
correct.
park
Yes.
on city open space, yeah.
Yeah.
So basically you want to know from council whether it should say what that wording means, whether we allow cars on that access easement or not, the public access easement.
Really, it's that issue. I think on the language, we can work with Craig to determine if the current language is the best fit or if there's other recommended language.
But it's not a vote or anything. It's just people, them, okay. So Lon, do you want to say whether you think that cars are allowed on that access easement, the public access easement in favor to Alpine City? So from the cul-de-sac up to where it goes to public open space, do you think cars should be allowed? Yes or no?
I would say just based on that area, I don't know why it would need to be.
Okay.
No.
Okay, you say no. What about you, Jessica?
I think the original intention, I listened to the recording, was that that would be access to North Mountain and making sure that there's always access for Alpine residents with with motorized vehicle.
Okay, so
Kind
you
of-
think,
Yeah, that we need to be
Vehicles.
able to have it.
Kelly?
Yeah, obviously I wasn't there on the council at the time, but it sounds like it, and that's what I think the road was intended for, so.
Okay,
Yeah. I
and
think
Greg?
cars.
Cars or no cars?
Yeah, I think cars, however, you know, well regulated,
Okay.
certainly, and I
No,
think
I
that you wanna
agree.
plan well where they're gonna park and ensure, you know, mitigate fire risks.
Or like I said, maybe get permission for the city to go out there, you know, if they have whatever reason, maybe limited access. Jason, what do you think? Cars or no cars?
I agree basically with what Greg said.
Okay, so do you have what you need, Shane?
Yes.
Okay, let's move on. So item 3, which is the consent calendar, and then just one more comment, because I know you guys just all walked in. If you guys want to make a public comment during the meeting, which will be after our consent calendar, you will need to fill out a public comment card that is just outside. There's a stack of them. Okay, yes, sir. So public comment time is for comments that are not on the agenda. So anything that's on the agenda, we don't need to fill out a public comment card. Right? That's what we're talking. Okay, so
Yeah.
I've got, I was wondering, I would entertain a motion to move action item A and C to the consent calendar if there are not any questions.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we move action item 1, final plat, Old Moyle Mound Plat C, and resolution R 2022-18, approval of the special service District 22 amended and restated sewer and treatment services contract up under the consent calendar.
So
I'll
as
second
item
that.
G and H, okay. Okay, so we've got a motion by Jason Thielen and a second by Lon Lot. We'll need a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Let it be. Okay,
Yeah, I'll make a motion, Mayor, that we approve the consent calendar with some corrections that Shane and I made on the minutes last meeting.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Lon Lot and a second by Greg Gordon to approve the items on the consent calendar, including the modifications to the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Just
Okay,
The Westfield Road project is on there. That will complete the sidewalk from 200 North along Westfield Road. Alan's been great to work with. We appreciate that. We look forward to having that project done.
thank you, Alan. Okay, we've got item 5. I'm sorry, I totally just skipped over. Public comment. Do we have any public comment cards? I've got one. Okay, is this the only one?
Mayor, I failed to tell you, we have an Eagle Scout to present a project tonight
Okay.
too, during public comment.
Okay. And do we have him here? He's right there. Yeah.
You want to have him?
Yes.
now?
Yes. Whose phone was that? You guys turn the sound off?
It might be your computer.
Oh.
So this is David Martin. He contacted me about an Eagle Scout project. We don't see a lot of these anymore, so we'll let him present his project.
Hello, Alpine City Council. Let's see.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so can we go to the next slide real quick?
Austin's getting that pulled up.
Okay, awesome. So I'm a member of Troop 1098 out in, dang it, my mind just blanked. Out in American Fork and coming up on 18, so I got to get my Eagle Scout project done. So, I'm a junior. Well, I've been riding on the Lone Peak mountain bike team. I've noticed that this one trail was a Heritage Hills trail. Is getting a lot of use and could use a little bit of maintenance and help with some of that. So I'd like to make it enjoyable for everyone to use, you know. So go to the next slide now. Few ideas I had for it was to put a bike maintenance stand kind of by the kiosk at the bottom of the trail there. And then 2 or 3 benches, well, 1 to 2 benches on the trail. And maybe we place those benches in like a spot to make sure some ATVs don't go up. Occasionally I see those racing up and down that area. So we can go to the next one now. So the numbered locations on the trail are the different spots for the benches. And then at the bottom is where that maintenance stand would be, right by the kiosk at the bottom. My personal favorite locations for the bench are number 1 and 2. Those are actually, they all really have a pretty nice view looking out. If you move to the next ones, you can see the pictures looking out from that one right there. So the top picture is looking out from spot 1, and then going down the second one in the middle is spot 2, and so on as number 3. They would all work pretty well because they all have a significant climb up to those spots. You can go to the next page now. This is one of the stands that I looked at. This one is right at the bottom of Rodeo Down in Lambert. The estimated cost was about $1,700 with tax included in that estimate. This I think would just be a good spot since there's 1 or 2 spots where there tend to be a lot of goat heads and flattened tires. So
The trail committee does have a plan for that for trail day to help with that situation too.
And okay, you can go to the next one.
Oh,
This is one of the benches I looked at. I talked to Russell Smith actually today. And he said the estimate for one bench was about $19.20. And it had a lead time of about 4 to 6 weeks. Now he suggested a concrete pad of 7 feet by 3 feet by 4 inches deep. It doesn't have to be that way. We could put like a concrete post in the ground as another option. This is just what he suggested. This would be about 7 cubic feet. So probably, let's see. And then one of the colors I saw on there was this hammer tone copper canyon color to kind of help blend it into the surrounding area. So it wasn't just like a sore thumb that sticks out up there. It just kind of looked a little bit more natural up there. And from what he said, it lasts about 15 years without fading. You go to the next one. So yeah, I'd like to organize the purchase and delivery of and installation of the agreed upon trail improvements and request Alpine City's approval and financial assistance with the material purchases. And I propose to complete this project either Saturday, May 21st or Saturday, June 4th. Are my two dates so far. They can be moved around a little bit.
So how much financial assistance are you asking from the city?
So the two benches together, we can go pick them up, so we wouldn't have to have them deliver them here. Would it be about roughly $4,000? And then the stand is another $2,000.
Have you looked into having a bicycle shop donating that or sponsoring it?
Excuse me?
Have you asked local bicycle shops if they'd be willing to donate or sponsor a repair stand or anything like that?
No, I have not yet.
Are you going to raise any funds yourself to help with it?
I can raise some funds to help with it.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Have you worked with the Trails Committee on this? Are they giving you directions on these? These are some of the things that they want up there?
A little bit. I mean, I talked to Will Jones about some of the different things that could be up there. But no, not a whole ton yet.
So on this project, do you need to hit all three of those for that to meet your eco project? Or could we kind of look at it and pare it down just from an expenditure side? That's, probably more than the city would want to take on, but is there
Yeah,
certain
it
elements
could be
we
just
could
like
look at
one
it?
bench and then
Okay.
the stand. I'm still working with the scouting side of that
Mhm.
to figure out exactly what is gonna meet that requirement. So that's flexible on that side too.
And on your locations, I couldn't tell from your perspective, but there's a part on that trail where you're on almost that ridge line, and it's really beautiful because you're looking either down, to the canyon, to AF Canyon, or you're looking to the right to Jacob's Ladder. Were either one of those locations, either one of those three along kind of that ridge line where you can get a full, 360?
Let's see. So the first 1 and 2 ones, you get kind of a full 360 view. And then the third one is kind of situated on the hillside. So you're looking up into Jacob's Ladder in that area.
Okay.
So I have to make sure I'm part of that open space up there. We just have an easement. I'm part of that ridge trail and
You know
below
what
it,
part
we-
I'm talking about, where you kind of get up there and you see. the-
Yeah, and I'm not 100% sure if that's on the open space that is city open space or if it's on the part that we just have an easement. So we need to verify that. We can
From
work with
from
you on
where I
that.
looked, these looked in the city park area.
Okay, good.
They're just below that fence line up there. So
Okay.
So I think typically in the past, when we've approved Eco Project, it's been maybe a match as far as helping with the cost. I don't know. Can you give us some more historical?
They varied. Sometimes the cities came up with more money if they, feel like it's something you really want up there. So, we can make whatever work that the city council would like to do.
So the Trails Committee approved all of this.
no, not yet.
Do we have anybody? Oh, I didn't see you, Will. Hey,
Oh, we
So
did?
you're good, yeah.
No.
3 sites were approved. The bike stand was approved. They were good. David and I met for about an hour. He showed me the locations and stuff and went over all that. And then that's been gone to the committee since then.
So Dave didn't go to the committee, but you then brought it to the committee from them.
anyone else have any questions?
So maybe I can ask one more question to the Trails Committee, and I apologize. I mean, to Jessica's point, it's awesome. And I think the benches are great. It is more expensive as far as an outlay than I've seen us do before. By significant, maybe I'm missing something, but do we need to do all three of those, are they saying, or is there a priority that we would do?
I think that bike repair, and we might want to locate it at the end of this, but put the bike repair right there at that parking lot, and then one bench is what I think is very good, and it's right. It would see both sides, but not clear to talk. We can't be on this ridge. We don't own that ground. We just have to.
So that would drop the price down to 4,000.
And I wonder if we can work with them a little bit. We didn't have a chance, because I hadn't seen his bench yet, but let's talk to Smith and see if we can get a little difference.
Yeah, it's a great looking bench. The Smith Engineering.
Yeah,
It's the one we get your signs out here.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we can work with them.
down in Spanish Fork, yeah.
If you've seen the benches that are down by the pickleball courts, it's that bench.
Yeah,
So they're built to last. Like some of the wood ones I know that are in Lambert Park had a relatively short life, but these are built to last.
yeah, that's why I picked a metal one, because the spots up there are pretty exposed, so whatever you put up there, you gotta have something substantial, otherwise it's not gonna last very long.
So are we looking, there's no motion here, but we're trying to give direction at this point.
Yeah, and if you know, if you can give us an idea of what you want to spend, like I said, we can.
I personally would like to see matching funds, whether it's, your fundraising or get donors, but I think I know other cities have gotten bike stands through bike shops. I would really encourage you to maybe go through, we've got like 3 or 4 bike shops, within our reach, that maybe you can approach them, and then, and we'd be I would assume that we'd be willing to say, hey, this bike stand's sponsored by whoever, whether it's Contender or whoever it may be. Yeah, Hanger, but
And then maybe we'll just give it to you at cost too, which could be a significant
yeah,
pricing difference.
Okay.
actually, no, because they don't have the bike stands. This is from a different source, right?
I believe it was the same one, but the website I pulled it off may or may not be the same.
I mean, I would appreciate that if they, they might be able to get it, like you said, they might be able to get a better price. And so that might be enough.
Can I ask one more question? How are you getting your hours in for your service on this? Is it bringing the concrete up to the chair? What is your service hours? I'm curious.
We're still finalizing some of that, but that was part of it. And part of it was probably bringing the benches up there, especially if we're going down to pick up. Me and my dad are going down to pick up a bench, then we'd be bringing it up there and securing it to the concrete then. And then, either laying the footings for the concrete pad if we decided to go that way. And kind of digging a spot, leveling it out up there so that it's.
I guess if I was just to put my 2 cents at the very end, I'd be in support of working with the Trails Committee on where to put both of those and funding it with the caveat of trying to raise some funds. I think matching funds, having to get half of it may be very difficult, but if you can go and you can try to, there's $4,000 that we're doing in the city. If you can try to raise some funds, try to get some discounts, work hard on that. I still think this would benefit the city.
I agree. Great project.
Well, and I would just like to add one more thing. Maybe we match to a certain amount and then he can decide, okay, that will only cover the repair station. And so that gives you kind of the ability to decide how much you want to put into that. And then it also puts the city, we're only gonna go to this dollar amount. I don't know if you guys have kind of a number in mind on that, but that would be giving him some direction too.
I like the initiative. Thanks for coming in. You're brave to get up there and talk in front. There's a lot of people here tonight. So good job. And I assume some of this is also because you mentioned the trail itself is doing some repair on the trail.
Like a few spots are just rutted out, just kind of even out some different parts of the trail.
Okay.
Mayor, can I jump in for a second?
Surely.
Have you been following the Eagle Project handbook steps and criteria with approvals?
I'm working through that actually currently.
Don't get ahead of yourselves, because if you get ahead of yourself, the district or the council may not approve the project, even though everybody else does. So I would suggest you get the book and get the appropriate signatures in sequence.
Yeah.
Don't get it mixed up, because
Again, hopefully we can give them some direction as opposed, I mean, like I said, I have no problem, but maybe what you say to Jessica's point, you know, if it's $4,000, we'll allocate. And again, I'm err on the side of, I'd like to get to be done, but maybe you save as much as 3,700, 3,600, you know, and you have to raise 300 on your own, or, I mean, I know you can ask for more, but I'm trying to give them something to move forward with.
And from our end, we can make that work if that's what the council wants to do.
Well, and that's why I was just kind of wondering what was the precedent. You know, I'm kind of comfortable with, we can match up, you know, we can match $1,000.
Mhm.
You know, so if you can go get whatever you can do with $1,000 from us,
Yeah,
that feels like kind of a balanced number.
it's varied project to project, you know, if it's something, maybe someday we would do this and we'd fully fund it anyway, but somebody else is doing the work. So it's kind of, all projects are not the same, I guess.
And of course, we don't get as many as we used to, as you
Right.
said.
So
So what else do we need here? Do we need to provide a number? And
Seems like
I
we should
think
take
he's gonna
a vote.
go
Take care.
talk to a,
Yeah.
or
Can you just-
this is, you can decide, right, Shane? Or-
yeah, I mean, we have money that was budgeted for trail work and things like that. So
Yeah.
it could easily come from there. So my mind, if you could raise some, that'd be great. But I think we can help. You can work with me or whatever.
Yeah, and getting it sponsors a great idea.
Yeah, I
think
could
that would
definitely
be-
talk to some of the bike shops and see if they'll be willing to sponsor that.
Thank you. Yeah, if you could just work with Shane, and then who is you're our Eagle Scout person,
Yeah.
right?
I don't hear very many of them anymore.
So you'll need a signature from him.
Okay.
But I think what Craig probably said is it's been a while since I've had to go through the Eagle Scout project process, but I believe there's a series of signatures you need to get. So Jason's the person, and then if you can work with Shane on the budgeting.
Okay,
Okay.
awesome.
But so
Thanks.
that we're on the same page, it sounds like even though we had some discussion here, we're gonna give him permission to move forward with it. I'll sign it. But we haven't attached a dollars amount to it, other than the fact that we're not to exceed those two products. The bike station and one of the benches, and he's gonna raise funds. I mean, because that's what I'm saying, is we're not
Yeah.
really giving much more direction other than that.
Let's shoot for 500.
Okay,
Good luck. But yeah, I'll sign it.
awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we've got public comment. We've got one person, Larry Van Vector. You know, if we can get the timer going or teed up. Austin. So you've got 3 minutes. And so this is on something that's not on the agenda, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'm Larry Van Bacter from Allegheny Court. And if you'll remember months ago when we had this meeting, this is concerning the equestrian complex up on Healy. And months ago, before the warehouse was even built, I expressed my fears that commercial lighting and commercial air handlers would soon follow, bringing light and noise pollution into our homes. I want to call attention to the 4 large utility poles recently installed at the complex. These, I believe, are for the installation of commercial lighting going into our residential neighborhood. I know Alpine has lighting ordinances in place to control such lighting. These say something like light trespass onto an adjacent property or public right of way is prohibited. and lighting shall be shielded and directed so as to minimize the view of such lights more than 300 feet away. Even though these ordinances pertain to sport courts and or parking lot lights, I would hope that parking lot lighting not used to light a parking lot would still be controlled by these ordinances. Just because they are not shining on a sport court or parking lot, they still need to be controlled to maintain public safety, health, and the general morale and welfare of the community. I'm asking please that these soon to be light pollution sources be shielded and directed as mentioned in this fine city's ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you. So Austin, have you looked into this at all?
Yes, so as he mentioned, we do have light ordinances, but those specifically apply to sports courts and then parking lot lighting in the business commercial zone. We don't, as far other lighting ordinances, we don't really have anything as far as the residential zones are concerned. And so other than the sports court lighting.
And how
So
does
is this gonna apply?
Yeah, is this a sport, under the sports court lighting
Appa-
ordinance then?
So actually I ran this by Craig to get his opinion, and he doesn't feel like this is a sports court.
Yeah, but I think the spirit of that ordinance was, would apply here. So, maybe we need to make it more broad. I think we were dealing with a lot of sport courts at the time, but, I think it would be sort of whatever the use is, right? If it's a big grassy field in the backyard, it's kind of the same thing. It's the light impact versus the usage that it's used for.
So we don't have a general lighting ordinance? So if I
don't.
wanted, I can just do a huge floodlight in the middle of my backyard as long as it's not a sports court light?
There's 2 soccer fields, pretty much along, well, one's just off Grove Drive and one's up Grove Drive further that have lights, and we don't really have anything that regulates that. It's kind of like noise. We've had a few calls recently on noise. The only noise ordinance that we have is related to construction noise. It's not noise in general, and maybe that's something we need to address, but there's nothing on the books for general noise, unless it became maybe a nuisance.
So can the lighting be under a nuisance also then? If that's the case?
We can ask Craig when he gets back, but I think there's some criteria in state law of what constitutes a nuisance.
Okay, well, I guess we'll take that off and maybe we need to
Yeah.
work on something because it just doesn't seem right.
Does the city have, do you see any solution for the city if we see that this is gonna adversely negatively impact that neighborhood? Do we have anything that we can go back to them with?
I can't think of anything on the books. Can you, Austin?
No, I've been trying to brainstorm on this, and it's almost like we really need to, if we want to prevent this, we probably need to come up with a new ordinance so we have some teeth that we can use.
Which wouldn't matter to this development at all,
Just, well,
moving forward.
or wouldn't it? I mean, I think it could be presently active, right, when passed. And these lights haven't been installed yet.
As far,
Just the
and
post.
the gentleman that made the comment might be more aware, but I believe these might just be posts at the current moment. I don't know that there's actually lights on them yet.
So it sounds like you've got work to
No
do.
light yet. I'm just trying to get ahead of the game because I know it's harder to go backwards than,
Okay.
stop it from happening.
But do we know if they hold electricity to those posts? I mean, that's a good point. If it's not that, then
We don't know. I don't know on that.
So I feel like we need direction for Austin to maybe come up with an ordinance and work with Craig to have a general lighting ordinance. So if we can get that on the agenda as soon
Yeah,
as
something
possible.
like a dark sky
Yeah,
ordinance that,
Well, and we looked at this, right, last year quite a bit and didn't end up with anything, right? It wasn't backyards, it was house lighting, but it's
Yeah.
part and parcel of the whole topic.
yeah. I
We
think-
discussed, and the planning commission had a lot of discussion on this. Dark skies, we talked about that. So dark sky ordinance is really not probably what we're looking for here. That's more it's very restrictive what you can do. So, I mean, we're talking about communities like Springdale down in southern Utah, that they have a dark sky ordinance, but
Park City. has
Alpine
dark
City is
sky
so far
ordinance.
developed that I don't think it would be very hard for us to be dark sky compliant city without significant, I mean, it would take us a long time to do it. But we could come up with a lighting ordinance. And we did discuss this. I think we just kind of fell on the sports court lighting because that felt like something everyone could agree upon at the time. But there was a lot of discussion and it wasn't clear how far we wanted to go with the lighting ordinance.
So Greg, will you work with Austin on that?
Yeah, we'll do.
Okay. And you can help too, if you'd like. Okay, so let's move on to item 5, reports and presentations. We have a presentation by Unsheltered Utah, Wendy Garvin, and we've got Lon Lot and Greg sponsoring this. If you can keep it down to 10 minutes, we've got a lot on the agenda
I
today.
timed it. I
Okay,
timed it. It's good.
perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Wendy Garvin. I am the Executive Director of Unsheltered Utah. We are what we call a curbside compassion organization. That means we do all of our work by going out to tent camps where our homeless population is living on the streets. If you could go to the next slide, please. I'm going to cover homelessness as some broad facts first, because my understanding is it's not very prevalent here in Alpine, but it is an overall problem in Utah, and it is a problem that everyone can solve with various different actions, and it does help, in my experience, to get ahead of it. So homelessness has rocketed up in the last 2 years. 4 years ago in Salt Lake City, which is the primary center of where our homeless population lives, we had we counted about 3,000 people total, of which most were in the shelters. And at that time, you guys may remember Operation Rio Grande, which closed down the main shelter in Salt Lake City and proposed 4 smaller shelters with a total lower number of beds overall. During the 4 years since then, street camping has increased from 2020 to 2021, where we have numbers increased by 125%. My guesstimate from working out in the streets regularly is that it has increased again significantly in the last year. If I could have you go to the next slide. So the reason that we're seeing homelessness, in fact, I heard you guys talking about this a little bit earlier, inflation is affecting everything. It is affecting housing prices, it's affecting cars and transportation prices, and it's affecting general cost of living. In particular, housing prices have increased at an unprecedented rate, and I'm sure many of you have seen that in your own areas and across the state. For the first time, the median cost in Utah County of housing went to $500,000 and then surpassed Salt Lake County's median price of housing for the first time ever in history. So it's affecting everyone, and it's happening at a shocking rate. This doesn't just affect the cost of purchasing homes. Of course, it affects the cost of rentals as well, because you have to purchase the building and you have to you have to be able to pay your property taxes if you own even a single family home that you're renting out. So inflation is affecting everyone pretty dramatically. And the pathway we see to homelessness is first, people lean on their friends. They lose their housing, and so they lean on their friends. They stay in their basement apartment, they stay on their couch, they stay with their families. And I suspect, even though you guys don't see people out on the streets in Alpine right now, you do have some of that. You do have adult children who can't move out. You do have families that have come back from college who can't afford housing in the area in which they grew up. And that is what I call pre-homelessness. People who, if they lose their support in the form of their family, if their parents pass away or their parents experience financial hardship, then they become subject to homelessness, or they're forced into living situations, which is the second piece. We see them in situations that are not adequate housing. In particular, where we see that right now, along Lehigh, American Fork, the Linden area along the freeway, you'll see a lot of low-cost hotels. Those are, in fact, unofficial homeless shelters right now. Because the cost of hotels has not increased, but the cost of housing has, we see more and more people who cannot afford an apartment going to a hotel just for a few weeks, just until we get this sorted out. But there is no resolution because housing prices continue to skyrocket. And none of us here today have the ability to stop inflation. And it is causing cost of living across the board to be astronomical. If you can go to the next slide, please. So we also have a lack of shelter space, as I started to talk about. Operation Rio Grande closed the main homeless shelter in Utah. We do have a shelter up in Ogden and one down in St. George. There is nothing in Provo except walk-in centers where you can go and get services, but not housing. So Operation Rio Grande decreased the number of available shelter beds right as the economy went through its crisis. And of course, we couldn't have predicted the pandemic, but here we are 4 years later without enough shelter beds across the state of Utah. And what that means is we're seeing street camping increase all around Utah. I'm sure many of you have been down to Provo and seen it happening down there, and in Salt Lake City, it is pervasive. We have hundreds of people living in tents. There are many documented cases of our wealthier communities who will simply say, we don't have homelessness here. And so when they encounter a homeless person or a small homeless family, they drive them to the available resources. This doesn't sound bad, right? That's where they should go. They should go to the shelter, but the shelters are full. And so now what we have is Park City, Utah County, sending their people one at a time on the train or having a police officer drive them up to the shelter and drop them off. And the challenge with that is their support structure was here. Maybe they have an aunt that lives down the street. She can't house them, but they were getting food there 3 or 4 times a week. So as we move people away from their families and their support structures, they lose access to their family support, and then they are stuck depending entirely on resources from the state. And that's where we're at right now. We have a lot of people displaced, moved up to Salt Lake County, who just don't have access to any other resources besides what the state is offering. And now the state is hundreds of beds deficient. And so you guys are probably wondering, what am I doing here in Alpine talking about this? And see, I think we can move to the next slide. We need several long-term plans to go into place. One of those almost certainly is going to be a shelter in the Utah County area. My preference would be Provo, but it would be similar to what we're seeing now, where we bus people to Salt Lake City. You'd be able to take people to at least a little bit closer resource center here in Provo, where they could still access their family. There are other things that small communities can do. For example, you all could partner with American Fork, Lehigh, and Highland and fund a walk-in center, which would be like an 8 to 5 business center where community caseworkers come from, maybe the center, let's see, I'm forgetting now the name of the organization down in Provo, but one of the major organizations like the Road Home, the VOA, I think it's the Food and Care Coalition, they could send caseworkers twice a week to come down here to this end of the valley and help those people get housing and get access to the services that will boost them back up onto their feet. The community pays more if those folks don't have access to medical care. So a caseworker could help get them onto Medicaid or a Medicare plan that they can afford. Another thing that could happen, are you the chief of police in the area? Okay. The police are your frontline workers when dealing with an unsheltered population. They have the most interaction with them. And so while that can be a contentious relationship in areas where that's crowded or where there's a lot of crime, if you start early, you can make that a positive relationship. Your police officers can carry some minimal supplies, maybe a sleeping bag, a couple extra coats, a drop bag full of supplies. So when they encounter somebody who is unsheltered, they can start working with them, get them access to those caseworkers or to the supplies that they need to survive immediately. And what that does, one of the biggest challenges we see is that in a confrontational relationship between the police department and the unsheltered population, they don't report crimes. I don't know if you guys have heard this statistic before, but if you live unsheltered, you are 40 times more likely to be the victim of a violent crime than if you lived housed. So in fact, the police can be allies to our unsheltered community if they feel safe enough to approach a police officer, request assistance, or request help with a crime that they've become a victim of, building that relationship from early on is a very valuable thing that a small community can do. So I encourage you to involve your police department in these conversations. They're going to be the first ones to know when there are unsheltered people here, and they will be the first ones that they talk to. So that can be a very positive relationship if that becomes part of your city plan to approach that way. Another thing that cities can do if they have a small population, I think this is what Kearns does. They just get a small budget that they use for hotels. And when you have somebody who is pervasively living in a tent and they're not causing trouble, so that tent has kind of been allowed to stay up there, but the temperatures hit 32 degrees and you start to worry about their safety. You can provide housing vouchers or hotel vouchers and put them in a hotel for 3 days or till the inclement weather is about to pass. It's not a huge budget, and it is actually a very powerful way to provide safety for those folks without investing in a full-size shelter or a community center. So these are a few things you might consider, putting on your budget discussions or partnering with one of the existing service resource centers that do already provide hotel vouchers. The state provides a fairly large fund for hotel vouchers, and therefore you might be able to access that if you reach out and work on that. And the other thing I would really encourage you to do in the League of Cities and Towns and with your fellow city council members, I would be working with the city of Provo or the city of Orem to be considering a shelter in Utah Valley. This is a long process. It's an expensive process, but I will say that there's money right now. As we all know, there's been a lot of federal money for infrastructure, and addressing homelessness and building shelters is part of infrastructure. So right now is actually a very good time for Utah Valley to start talking about shelters in Provo or Orem where they make the most sense, and having all of the communities working together to figure out what can each contribute to make that a successful project. Let me see, I think I have one more slide. Okay, I think I talked about a lot of this. The last piece I wanted to mention is that housing is the solution to homelessness. So another thing that city councils can do that's actually very powerful is when you have someone approach you to build an apartment complex, I'm sure in this area that's almost always going to be luxury apartments. What you can do is say, I would like to see a certain percentage of those units be affordable housing. There is state money to subsidize affordable housing or deeply affordable housing. And what you get is an apartment complex with maybe 50 units, and 10 of them are more affordable. That gives the folks who move into those affordable units a change in scenery. They now have neighbors that they could turn to, and maybe they can finally find that job they've been looking for that helps bring them up out of their situation. It is much preferable to mix in a few affordable units in each more expensive complex to give these folks that change of scenery and a change in approach. Because if we concentrate poverty into areas, you're going to end up with like the projects. And my guess is you probably wouldn't get the projects in Alpine, but everybody feels the effects in a community like that. So what you want to do is spread out that affordable housing. And that is something you guys can do with zoning laws. The name of that zoning is inclusionary zoning. And the U of U did a fabulous write-up about it. It's been very successful in the areas where it's been tried. So I really appreciate the opportunity to address you. I know this is not always your primary focus in a town like Alpine, but it is something that you guys can have an effect on, and it will help our community long-term if everybody is educated and involved. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That was great.
So item B, financial report.
So two financial reports are in the packet. Report on sales tax for the last month received was up 11.38% previous year. I think things look good in the budget. The question on the doubtful account, allowance for doubtful accounts, that's an allowance that is put in there in case, say, a renter leaves town and doesn't pay their bill, or someone dies and doesn't pay their, can't pay their bill or something like that. So our collections are pretty high, so there's not a lot of that that does.
can go into more detail if you want. We've got some other items on the agenda.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions regarding the financials for Shane? If not, we can move on to the action items. Okay, we'll move on to item 6. B, public hearing for the Creekside conversion of 1 or 2 tennis courts to pickleball courts. I'm assuming, is there anyone here that's not here for this item? Okay, sorry, Will, you're gonna have to sit through this. So, I'm sorry? Item 3.
Yeah, we already did that.
It's all passed. Yeah. So we moved those to the consent calendar and we moved to approve the consent calendar because there was no question about it. We all knew that it was going to go through, and same thing with the final plat of Old Moyle Mound C. That was moved to the consent calendar because there really wasn't, it was very simple, basic things, and any questions that they had already been asked. No problem. But yeah, it's passed, it's done. Okay, so we've got a lot more to go. We have a deadline of 9 o'clock. So I'm gonna kind of, can I have a raise of hands? How many people here do not want to see the conversion of pickleball courts, of tennis courts to pickleball courts? Okay.
My mic's on.
So what I would like to do is, so that it is a public hearing. Let's have 3 people at 2 minutes each. Give the presentation. And as you come up, if you're the second and third person coming up, please try to say something different. And if you don't have anything more to add, know that we see the numbers, we understand that that's what you want. It's not that we don't want to hear you, but we want all the ideas to be heard. And then what about, how many people do we have here? Okay, so out of those people, actually, can you raise your hands again? People that do not want to see the conversion of pickleball courts. Okay, out of those hands, are there any that don't want to see pickleball courts at all? Okay, okay. And then people in favor of converting the tennis courts to pickleball courts. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna say the same thing to you guys. If you guys can have 3 people, 2 minutes each. Or what you can do is you can have 1 person, maybe 2 people at 3 minutes each. But I would like you guys to say something different. We want to hear why and the reasons, but not necessarily the same reasons. We understand, we're listening and we're taking notes. But we do want to expedite the process as much as we can. I'm sorry. Yes, okay, so if we can start with the people that do not want the conversion of the tennis courts to the pickleball courts. When you come up, please make sure that you say your name and your address, because we have to record it. And so if you could speak clearly into the microphone, your name and your address, and why you feel the way you do. And then Austin can, okay, we've got a timer. Yes, so make sure you say your name, your address, and then go ahead and.
Yeah, Spencer Bautista, 1165 Lone Peak Drive. So I'm against it. I love pickleball, so I'm not against pickleball, but we live in a community of about 10,000, I think is approximately what Alpine City has. We don't have the benefit of having a middle school or high school with those courts. And so totaling it, I think we have 6 courts total for 10,000 people. I just would be, you know, we have these girls play tennis. There's a number of others. It's a great sport. I think it's a number of kids from this area play on the high school team. Some of them play collegiate. I think having that resource, it's already limited. You know, if you look on the reviews for Creekside, it says tennis courts here are great, but always full. So this is kind of an independent review that's on Google, and I think that's been our experience, is that, you know, weeknights, Saturdays, when those resources are available, there just isn't enough of them. So really my thought on it is, we play pickleball as well. We love it. I'd be in favor of maybe raising funds to add courts versus take away a limited resource that's already pretty limited in a community with 10,000 people that are being used well and by a number of the citizens. So those, I think, are my main points, and would love to hear any others, but any questions on that from me?
Oh, just Timberline Middle School does have 4 tennis courts.
So there's 10.
So 10 total, I guess, for 10,000. That's still, yeah, you're right. I failed to, I was looking at the courts. It didn't list that, but that's right. So 10 total.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank
Okay,
you.
thank you so much.
Okay, or should we go back and forth? Is there?
Hi, I'm Katie Myers, 793 South, 1130 East. And I've enjoyed the past couple of years playing in those tennis courts, and they're the prettiest courts I've played in. The mountains are beautiful. They haven't been taking guys haven't taken care of the courts. And so I see some people don't play there because the nets are too low. There's no straps. In the mornings, you can't play there because the sprinklers hit the courts, so you can only play on 2 courts. So maybe it doesn't look full because we can't play on the other 2 courts. I like pickleball somewhat, not against pickleball. I'm willing to play pickleball, but you can play pickleball in all the churches around this area, which is a lot of people do. And I'd love to add pickleball courts, but I don't want to get rid of our tennis courts because we can't go to a church and play tennis in the churches. And I think there's plenty of room to add a pickleball court in lots of the parks. If we had money to build the park in Healy, then I assume we have money to build another park. And I'd like to see us to take care of our tennis courts, unlike we did at Burgess, where they fell apart, and that's why they became pickleball courts, and which are really nice. And the tennis courts are nice, but half the time when I go there at nighttime, pickleball players are playing there, so I don't get to play tennis. I have to wait for them to get off the court. And that would be another suggestion if you end up going through it. If we have to do the conversion, that pickleball players can't play on the tennis courts was an idea, or people can't be on their skateboards on the tennis courts. You have people ruining the courts, and I just like it to be taken care of it, because they are anytime I bring someone there who's never played there, they're just like, it's so beautiful here. It's best, it's the best place to play. And I appreciate that we have Creekside. I think it's a great park. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, one more person.
Hi, I'm Ben Smith. I live in 140 North, 600 East, Alpine. I play for the high school team at Lone Peak for tennis. And I know that our courts a lot seem like no one's playing. And yeah, during the weekdays when all the kids are at school, of course, no one's going to be playing there. But when we're like on summers, every summer morning, almost, it feels like there's always people there. It's always hard to get a court, and cutting that down to 2 would be worse. Another thing is that, like, if you ever go try to play at Burgess or in Cedar Hills, Harvey Park, whenever it's like nighttime and all the pickleball players are there, almost always you cannot get a tennis court because there are pickleball players playing on those tennis courts. I am not against pickleball. I love pickleball. And I'd love to see, there's plenty of space at Creekside that we could, like, if we had the money to build awesome pickleball courts, just not take down more tennis courts. Yeah, I have teammates that go and play all the time there in practice. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ben. So I thought I wanted to give some background. The reason that we went with the idea of converting tennis to pickleball is, yes, originally we had planned to put in 4 individual or standalone pickleball courts at another park in Alpine. And when we were moving forward with that, we had a bid, and this is all during the pandemic. And that number was around $80,000. If you bid for 4 individual pickleball courts now, it's about between what, 140 to 160, is that what it was?
160 to 180.
160 to 180, so it's almost doubled. So that's why it's a lot cheaper to convert. So that's why it's, the conversation even went there. Okay, so we've got 3 from, again, and then I have 3 people that are pro pickleball. And again, if you can stay with the same tenant, if you have new ideas, welcome the conversation.
My name is Rebecca Anderson, and I live at 592 High Ridge Lane in Alpine. And I love my Alpine home. And for the last 5 years, I have been running pickleball at the Stake Center at the Circle. And I get between 25 to 30 people every day. Monday and Thursday is when I do play. If I ran it every day, I'd get that many. That's how popular that sport is. And I opened up the Stake Center for pickleball because there was a need. People wanted to learn how to play, but there was nowhere to play. And so through the winter, through the colder months, people want to play. They just don't want to hibernate. And so we have it at the Stake Center and people come. But when the weather improves and it gets warm, we want to be outside just like the rest of you. And so I'm all for taking 2 of those courts and making them into pickleball courts. And I know they're going to be full, and it's going to be the most fun, friendly place in all of Alpine. My other thought is it's all about city connections, making connections with neighbors and bringing families together. And we've got an 84-year-old woman that lives at River Meadows, who I met at Burgess, by the way. She was just watching us play in the summertime. And I asked her if she would like to learn how to play pickleball. And she said, I would. And she's been coming to my pickleball for the last 3 or 4 years. And I just think there's a real need to have some more outdoor courts because they are full. So that's my thought on why we need more courts, especially these new ones that are being proposed. And we have plenty of baseball and soccer. There we go.
Hey, Rebecca, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
How do you feel about pickleball people? It sounds like from hearing from the tennis people, pickleball people using the tennis courts for pickleball and dominating that. Do you feel like pickleball people, do you feel like if it's a tennis court, it should be used for tennis? And if it's a pickleball court, it should be used for pickleball? Or do you feel like it's just like free for all, first come, first serve?
All I know is pickleball people are extremely friendly and inviting. And
Are you saying something about the tennis people in that comment? Or
if someone wanted to play tennis and we were there, I'm sure we would accommodate that, But to answer your question, we're willing to share.
Okay.
Of course.
Okay.
Thanks.
Do we have anybody else that would like to speak?
Chris Thackeray, 215 Estate Drive. I live right next to the Burgess Courts, and Kelly, I think the rules are stated actually on the on the courts, and that is that there's a certain duration, right, that you can play, and on whether it be, however you're using the courts, and so limiting. And the one thing I've said last time I was here, I've been advocating for pickleball for actually the court since the courts have been built, and have helped run the Alpine Days tournament. One thing I really regret about any of this conversation is that we're trying to play an exclusion between tennis and pickleball, and that is travesty, I think, in my mind, because there should never have been a battle about increasing the use of public lands, right? If you look,
it's awesome when our community can come together and utilize the facilities that we've got dedicated for it. And I think really for me, it's not a matter of trying to play tennis off of pickleball. It's what do we do to support the needs of the community that we have? One of the things I love hearing here, because I didn't hear it when I was doing this same presentation in Highland, is that there's nobody here that says that they don't enjoy pickleball. I'll tell you, when I was down there, there was a lot of people that said, hey, what is pickleball? What even is that? In 3 or 4 years, the growth of that sport has been such that now it's a matter of keeping up with the demand. I think the city council probably recognizes the demand if you go down to the park. I hope this isn't at the sacrifice of tennis, because I think that would be a mistake for any community to exclude the use of the public facility, right? I think right now, if you just look at it demographic wise, the city's got to make a trade-off between the cost of adding more facilities separate or rededicating the tennis courts. And so at this point, it's just a matter of use of the facilities. So, thank you very much.
My name is Wendy Garvin. I live at 484 Westfield Road. And you're probably tired of me talking to you about this, but I agree with the tennis people. We need to, number one, we need to maintain our tennis courts. There are 2 courts at Burgess Park that have nets that are just destroyed. And we need to maintain those. And we need to make sure the lights are so that people can use those courts. Regarding the courts at the City Creek facility, I think if we were to eliminate the watering issues on the east side of the courts, those courts would be used. As of now, they're not usually being used because of the watering. And I think if we could, I think we need to be able to, and it's not tennis versus pickleball. So by the way, USA Tennis is now endorsing pickleball. After the most recent US Open, on the tennis channel was a pickleball championship. And they have it scheduled going forward every quarter. There'll be pickleball championships on the tennis channel. So we have to understand that it shouldn't be tennis versus pickleball. I think it's inclusion of all. The concern that I have right now is that if we don't have more pickleball courts, we're so far behind the demand. It's just we're out of control. You cannot get on a pickleball court at Burgess Park in the evening, any evening. You can't get on them. And also on the weekends, you can't get on them. During the middle of the day, when the tennis courts and the pickleball courts are completely open, is during the middle of the day. I think what we need to do is maintain the courts we have, fix the courts at Burgess so people start using those courts, and then arrange to get additional pickleball courts to take care of the demand for the sport in the city of Alpine.
Thank you, Whitey. So I thought I'd provide a little bit more background also. So originally, the pickleball people had asked to convert the courts at Burgess Park for pickleball. And I said no, because I was a longtime tennis player until I broke the plateau of my tibia off and I could no longer play tennis. And I felt that it was important for the tennis players to be able to have lighted courts so you guys could play at night, because I know how important that is. And so I asked them to look for other solutions in other places. And, the city came up with one park, but that was not ideal because of the overusage by another sport at the time. And then, we came to Creekside. And like I said, it was a fiscal one, and it was one that, for me, it just made sense, where for half the price, we can convert existing courts. So that it's not, and I guess the way I looked at it is, I felt that in the city of Alpine, we have 4 tennis courts at Timberline, we have 2 at Burgess, and we have 4 at City Creek, and we only have 4 pickleball courts for the entire city.
Creekside.
I'm sorry, what did I say?
City.
Creekside, I do that all the time at Creekside. And so it was just kind of leveling the numbers to work with the demand. I'm not for eliminating tennis or eliminating the opportunities for our citizens to play tennis. Like I said, I've played tennis since I was like 8 years old, and I wish I could still play. But like I said, still will have your lighted courts, but it's up to the council at this point. Shane, did you have anything, or Austin, did you have this agenda item, or was it Shane?
We didn't really assign it, but I would like to address just a couple things that were brought up in the public hearing comments. Maintenance of the courts, the water at Creekside. We've taken some
I'm sorry.
measures.
I guess, am I supposed to close public hearing before we, or how does that work?
Things that weren't said, and I feel like you say things that weren't repeated, that weren't said, since this is our only chance to talk about it.
Okay, 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. So Amanda Collins, 1593 Rosanna Lane. So I'm a organized pickleball. I've done it for the last 2 years. We play weekly with a group of women in Alpine. I love pickleball, but I'm a tennis mom. I have kids who play tennis, and the 3 years that we've lived here, every year the league, the Utah Valley League in Alpine has grown 30 to 50% every year. And so we're on a trend that it is growing in demand. The demand is going up for tennis. I know it's going up for pickleball too, and so I'm not going to discredit that, but tennis is going up. And so I want you guys to realize we're going in the opposite direction if we take tennis away. When we play in the Utah Valley League, when we play the other schools, Lehigh, American Fork, Provo, all the surrounding neighborhoods, Alpine has twice as many players as every other community. So other communities are converting their tennis to pickleball. That's not the demand, the need that for our community. Our community, tennis is growing exponentially among our youth. And so I just wanted to give you guys an overall picture of what's happening in our community right now. We have a higher demand of pickleball and higher demand for tennis. Tennis, the demand is not going down, it is growing. 30 to 50% in the Utah Valley League in Alpine every year. Thank you.
Juan?
I agree with her. We gotta keep the tennis courts. Lon Neal, I live on Quail Hollow, in Alpine, up by the Stake Center. When that Stake Center was put in, all the dirt that was leveled out of there to make a parking lot was put flat right up behind it for eventual soccer fields. And we thought, hey, we're going to be soccer people. That's a perfect spot for not 8 pickleball courts, but 16. Let's put them in. Let's give everybody a break. I mean, that's 1 acre out of the whole Lambert Park. We've got parking up there. You know, we can even work with the church and park in the parking lot and have it steps up to the pickleball courts right there. I think pickleball is, there's no question it's the game to play. All my grandkids play pickleball. I'm a tennis player still. I play 3 times a week and go in the Serbian Open Friday this week. But we need to do both of them and not just for the bikers, although I know. We need to take 1 acre out of that Lambert Park and put 16 pickleball courts in.
Lon, I'm just curious. I mean, the issue isn't the amount of the acre of it or 2 acres of it. I mean, we have lots of space in different areas. The issue is cost, as we're talking about. So do you have any ideas on how to, I mean, you've mentioned previously, I think sponsoring or helping to build something. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is it's easy to just say, stick it in Lambert, but that's not well, that'll bring up a lot more people, but that's not really our discussion. How do we, if we want to do 16 of these, how do we go about that? Do you see a way for the community to participate in that? Do you see solutions there at all?
Why don't we try it? Why don't we open it up to the community and say, is there people that would donate to this? And let's see if we can raise the funds. Maybe we can raise half and the city can raise half. But they're both here to stay.
Do I close it and then we discuss it? So we'll close the public meeting and proceed with the discussion. Go ahead.
So just while everyone's here that's very involved in this, and maybe you can help spread the word on some of this stuff. So the water on the east end of the courts at Burgess Park, we can't control the wind for one thing, but we've taken measures to try to reduce that issue. We've turned that zone off. If you've noticed, last 2 or 3 summers, the grass basically burns up right there because we haven't, sorry, Creekside Park, because we just haven't watered it. We're talking about trying to put like a concrete apron out so many feet away from the fence to help with that also. So we're trying to figure out ways to mitigate that problem.
Couldn't we just do a dry scape?
That's an option too. The problem, like a lot of times with rocks, like we had rocks over by the pavilions, by the splash pad, and the kids throw them on the roofs of the buildings, and there's issues that come with that too. The skateboards, there's already signs there that say you can't take skateboards in there and scooters and all that kind of stuff, and they do it anyway. So we need help from you guys that are over there using the courts to control that. The Burgess Park courts, it was mentioned something that they were replaced, put pickleball courts in because they weren't maintained. That's not the issue. They were horrible. The surface was asphalt. We had the cracks repaired. They were 2 to 3 inches wide. We repaired them and they just opened back up. So we tore all that out and put in nice post-tension courts that will last probably all of our lifetimes. We'll have to research some things like that. But and then there was one other maintenance of the nets and lighting. I'm 100% sure that we could do better on that. So we'll work on that. It's not that we can't. Sometimes we just don't know because we don't have a lot of people, and I don't think any of us play tennis. So, but we can work on the nets for sure, and we are working on resurfacing the courts. So, spread the word for us.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or?
I don't have any questions, but I can make a motion.
Okay.
Unless you guys want to talk some more, do you want me to make a motion? Then we can talk.
Well, I had some thoughts. I had 2 ideas. One, if we were to convert 2 of these for 8 pickleball, potentially to the south there, we could add 4 more tennis courts. And you'd have, 8 pickleball and 6 tennis there. That would take out some lawn there. Or I think down in the southwest of that quadrant would be a good spot to put in just new courts. Because it's right there by the parking lot. It still has a restroom and drinking fountain. It wouldn't block in, say, the tennis area up there.
Are you talking about northwest of the parking lot or southwest?
I don't know. Austin, could you, the southwest of that area over by the other parking lot. So down
okay,
here.
I'm sorry, okay.
And you could put some soundproofing, but I think down there, it's just that little space and it's close, and then we don't lose courts. And yeah, it's a higher cost, but it probably be well worth it to the city.
So do we have is there anything that would preclude us from doing that?
No, I mean, with the design of Creekside Park, the idea with this big grass area, and the council back then said no organized sports on it. This is just a family park, not football or soccer or whatever. But the idea with this big grass area is we'll probably never have another park of this size in the city. And who knows what the future holds. And so this was kind of an area, if the city ever decided to do some kind of a recreation center or something like that, we have this big area that could be used for that, or a library or a senior citizens or something like that. So that's why it was left that way. And then, it was intended to be a big gathering place for Alpine Days also. We put power throughout there so that we'd have options for all the concerts and everything else that goes along with Alpine Days. So yeah, it's how the city decides to use that area, I guess.
We had gotten an email, I can't remember, maybe a couple of them that said this. to just put the courts, the 4 courts on the other side of the tree line to the south of the tennis courts and do some shade. Do you guys remember seeing that email? Do some shading and some benching so you could interact with tennis and then you could interact
do,
with
but
pickleball.
I think that was the same reason that Shane was saying. I think that's why they originally, the 4 alone was going to be on the north end of the tennis courts, right? Between,
no, I'm talking the south.
I know, but if you're going to the south, then it's the same thing that Shane just addressed, is that what if we do want to expand and build something there for the city and the citizens, whether it's a library, whether it's a whatever it may be, then you're severely limiting yourself, right?
Well, maybe I can find that email. It looked like they scaled it out and they were kind of tucked up nicely just along the south side of the courts. So it wouldn't really break up that large open area. It actually, if you're going to make a rec center, your courts now are all bundled on that part of your property.
I don't know. I still think the best place would be on where Shane originally suggested would be on the north end if you're going to do standalone. I like Greg's idea just because it splits up the parking, and I really like that idea, and the restroom facilities, where I do feel like, I mean, that would be good, but
On one of Greg's ideas, if I can just comment on that, Mayor, if we were to build more courts, I would suggest pickleball courts rather than converting some tennis courts to pickleball and then building new tennis courts because of the difference in dimensions, so that they would be standard.
okay. There's no further comment. I'll entertain a motion.
Well, I don't have a location, as Greg pointed out, maybe there's a better, but my motion would be 4 new pickleball courts as we were going to build in Healy, and then convert 1 tennis court to 4 pickleball courts. And that would be via flex, not a full conversion, but flex courts. Because I've seen that in other cities, and what they do is they just have signage, and the signage says, if you're here to play tennis, then tennis has precedent. But then if no one's there playing tennis, then you have 4 more pickleball courts. So it's 4 new, convert 1 court to flex, a flex
But are you
court.
saying, so on the flex court, if there's people playing pickleball there and tennis people come, they can kick the pickleball people out?
Oh, I don't know if it's again, it's just, there's kind of standards set in this community. And so I don't know if you guys would say you're kicking them out. It's just a standard that's been created between tennis players and pickleball players. And again, it's just shown in signage where it says, if tennis players are playing, I mean, maybe you give them a time limit. But tennis, because it's a tennis court first, basically has first right of refusal. But you could build 4 new courts and take 1 tennis court and create 4 courts of flex space. You still have 4 tennis courts.
No.
You've got 8 pickleball courts.
No, having 4 courts and flex space, I cannot see it working. Having been a tennis player and having all those lines on your tennis court, I can't imagine being able to play and call your lines accurately, because you're talking about 4 court sets of lines within 1 tennis court. That's not realistic. All the flex courts I've ever seen have had 2 max, and the orientation wouldn't be ideal, but. So I'm sorry, you can make your motion however you want. I'm sorry.
So however that court would be, I'm not a professional on making a flex court. So I would just then, the motion would be to take 1 tennis court. Its first and primary use is tennis, but have it also be flexible.
Okay, so
For
we
total
have,
of 2 or
Again, I'm not the expert. Maybe you guys can help us. What do you usually get out of a tennis court?
well, there's space for 4, but yeah, would it be too many lines, I guess?
I've never seen 4 flex courts on a tennis court, and I probably have never seen it because it would make it very difficult for tennis players.
I don't know. Do you want to ask someone if they know?
Yes, back there in the hat.
I was just gonna say, I mean,
throw in some random courts and some random parks and see how. And you guys already talked about, I love football also, but I want more football courts, but we're not talking about the expense of building. It's just fine. Right, force it into some random.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were answering the question of how many flex courts could be on the court, because that's what I'm looking for. Sorry about that.
You can do it one of two ways. You can take one tennis court and put in 2 pickleball courts. So you have one on each side of the net, one on the other side of the net, without a lot of lines. Or you do 4 and you'll have a massive number of lines. And it's not ideal, but if you're gonna put in 4 additional pickleball courts, I think Jessica's got a good point. We could take 2 tennis courts and make flex courts for pickleball, but not so many lines that it interferes with the game. They've done that in Highland, they've done it in other communities where you roll in nets and then you roll off nets. And I think that's a good option if that's the direction you're gonna go.
Well, and just for clarification, it was just to convert 1 court. I think we need,
See, 1 court would be 2 pickleball.
okay, so then we would have 6 pickleball total.
Okay, so that's the motion.
That's the motion.
That's the motion. Is there a second? Not right now. I'm sorry. I'm asking for a second. Okay, so that motion fails. I will entertain.
So to clarify, Jessica, that was converting one tennis court to 4 and then 2.
No,
flex on.
just 1 tennis court can
The motion
be
was
2.
a brand new
And a flex on
standalone
2.
court. Yeah.
So forth, yeah.
Okay.
And not a conversion, just a flex.
Well,
Okay.
Right down the middle, tennis court.
Okay.
Okay, you guys, hey. So yes, what I've seen in Park City and in other communities, they've taken tennis courts, painted pickleball courts on each side of the net. And so you can play either or. Yes, so usually with the flex courts, you come with your own net. I have seen private HOAs that have like rollaway nets. They're really expensive and heavy. I don't see us doing that, providing the nets. If we do flex courts, you would have to come with your own net. You'd bring them and take them away.
The junior
Okay.
high actually has pickleball lines on it, so it's not like it's new, meaning. you can
Right.
see them. Can be people do.
Mayor, I had a question. for
Yes, you have,
Shane.
hey, guys. Greg?
So Shane,
Yes.
so you were saying this square of grass was kind of meant for a potential future purpose. How much space would be required? Do we have an idea? I mean, was it gonna take the whole space? Was there meant to be additional parking or?
No, I mean, there wasn't any kind of a building laid out or parking lot or anything. It was just, we kept that space as big as we could.
Yeah. So what I'm wondering is if you added some pickleball in there, or like a, couple, would that prevent a future building, or would it be minor enough with the length of that you could still do whatever, just about in the future?
Yeah, it's hard, we just have to work around it if, in the future, so.
The hard thing about that is really Alpine Days now is there. And that whole area is used. So that's kind of an Alpine Days area there. So if we had a pickleball court, that's gonna affect food courts and where people sit out and how we're laying out any type of music. Yeah, so I actually don't think putting a pickleball court's a big deal with regards to future development, because it seems like they're able to take down and put up relatively expensive. There's a cost to put them up, but it's not like a building. But this park is really used heavily in Alpine Days, so I'm just a little concerned about adding any more going that way, going to the south.
Yeah, and has anybody ever seen, I mean, we have the orientation we have of the 4 pickleball courts at Burgess Park. Have you ever seen them stacked like 4 in a row instead of, so that would conserve some space, you know, if they were put south of the tennis courts there. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but.
Yeah.
I think up to the north would be fine, and it's closer to the restrooms, closer to the parking. Okay,
Well,
I will entertain a motion if somebody has one.
so I think that's a good point on Alpine Days there. What I was thinking is if they're over kind of to the southern edge, you know, they wouldn't reach up to the, you know, basically the sidewalk there, that volleyball. So that would mostly stay open from where you hit into the sidewalk from the parking lot, you know, it's still open from there. That's what I was thinking. However, yeah. Guess we lost our map there, but.
After you, Lon.
To me, this is just really interesting to me. I've been on the council for over 8 years, and this has been one of the most difficult things to work through. I thought where Greg jumped on with me to support a presentation about homelessness, I thought we might get things in perspective at some point in our lives to say what is important and what isn't. And this is one of those things that I find very interesting, that is sort of like a skier and a snowboarder, right? When snowboarding come out, the skiers just hated the snowboarders, and now snowboarders just have taken over things. But I find it interesting that we can't come to a reasonable solution to location for one, because we've gone over this for quite a while now, and it is honing into the point of Creekside being one of the better locations to do this, right? Because of several other different factors. And so where do we put our focus on some of this? It's like, I thought bringing a presentation about homelessness would help us with perspective, right? And say what is important, because some people don't even have a meal to eat or a place to live. And I'm not saying we're fighting, because we're really not, but we're wondering where we're going to spend this money. And so we do want to provide for both aspects of this community. It's interesting, though, that the pickleball community is more of an older community, right? They're not, but hear me out, there is more older people are playing it than typically are doing any other sports. They're not biking as much. They're not going up in the mountains as much. There are more older people right now spending time playing pickleball, and our community is, the demographics is becoming an older community. And so when we as a city are trying to look at providing a sense of community and providing services for our citizens, that's why I'm saying this is a hard decision to be making, because we are trying to provide it for everyone, but we're limited to what we have to deal with. And so we were thinking we had quite a good solution, that we would convert some of those tennis courts, and obviously we have a lot of people who don't feel that way. We were thinking at one point that it's going to be the concerns of the neighbors in Creekside, that there's going to be more people there, and that it's going to be noisy or whatever, and that isn't even the concern. People in the neighborhood, I talked to many of the people over there. they're not concerned at all about that. Their concern, their one major concern was that we would take up and we would use more of the open space for something else, that they liked the open space. And that was comments from those who are over there, that we're going to get rid of that open field. And so that is yet another concern as we're working on trying to find a good solution. But we thought we were compromising in a way, but it almost feels like now we're not compromising. Yes, we need, it sounds like the tennis community is growing. We're asking to shrink that, but we felt like leaving the tennis courts at Burgess, like the mayor has said, it was one of those compromise things. Especially for the neighbors over there and in Burgess Park. If we told them it was, if this meeting tonight said that we were going to be using Burgess Park, there would be equally as many, if not more actually, people here saying, you've already bombarded us with so much here. We can't handle any more here. We are dealing with enough. We would hear that as well. And so, so this is just a hard decision. I mean, I could make a motion real quick, Mayor.
Yep.
But
Please
I
do.
don't know that it would.
Please make a motion and let's see what happens. Let's move this along. It's 8:30.
No. Yeah, no, we're going to be increasing the size of the firehouse and using a road. It won't work.
I will entertain a motion.
I actually respect Councilman Thielen and allow him now to speak. Because
Thank
he
you.
was.
Okay.
Again, so here, and so we allow me to make a motion?
Yes. Make a motion,
Well,
please.
okay, so again, the planning commission has already reviewed this. The planning commission has taken feedback. They gave the recommendation to take those two tennis courts and make them 8 pickleball courts. So that's the recommendation we're getting from planning commission. I don't know if that was said. With that said, I tend to agree that we're trying to fix a problem. And to your point, I think community involvement is really important, but it's also a way never to get anything done. It really is, because there's always both sides that are very passionate about it. And if you try to make everyone happy, most of the time you don't do anything. And that's my experience with it. With that said, today's motion is about these specific 2 tennis courts. If we want to do 1, if we want to do 2, or if we want to do none of them at the time. My motion right now would be to deny the proposed pickleball considerations that the planning commission put forward and reevaluate location.
Jason.
Well, because we do not have the information. We have a bunch of different things of saying, hey, let's put pickleball courts in a separate area over by the volleyball courts or down below. That's a whole different discussion. And right now we're talking specifically about these 2. That's what the consideration is here.
Or you could do an alternate motion and do what Jessica did and maybe just do 4 standalone, just north of it. What was proposed by the city?
And I think if we're going to do that, it's going to take a little bit more discussion on where to put that than just a knee-jerk reaction right now to try to throw something in a motion to finish it before 9 o'clock when we do not go a minute past.
Well,
So
and
that's my motion.
I just feel like we're delaying a decision. Delays cost us money.
Well, I
Us
think-
not acting on what we voted on before because of public clamor has
Well-
cost the city. It's gonna cost the city over $80,000.
It's
That's a
already
delay
cost the
of
city $80,000.
I know, but who knows? You're talking about a whole new thing.
I guess what I'm saying is I would vote, my motion is to not put pickleball courts on those 2 tennis courts. And this is part of the process, and to see if we can find a place that is more feasible than that. And that could be in Creekside Park as well. But that's not a
So we
discussion I
have a
want to just
motion
randomly
to
pick.
deny. Is there a second?
I'll second that. And I think a consideration we should, way is, or do we want to do 4? We looked at 4 in the past, right? That other layout had 4 at the bottom. Or does that just barely meet the needs of today or not even, right? Should we be looking at trying to do 8? So there's a bit of a complex central to the city. Or, you know, or is it 2 sites of 4, right? Different locations.
Well, and I have a point. This isn't knee jerk. We can look back through all the communication that's been occurring this week in our emails, and the city staff actually has a diagram, and I don't know if Austin, you can pull that up, where they've made a recommendation to put the courts to the north of
The tennis courts.
the tennis courts. So we have thought out recommendations, staff supported direction that's already occurred that we could go to and use as a guide. The consideration of going south was based on an email and the logistics of being able to view both courts at the same time. But if we need to have that staff supported recommendation, then I would be completely supportive of putting them to the north as staff recommended.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, Mayor, I'd like to inform the public a little bit more on what's happening up here as well. We're making a decision that has to have 4 of us say yes. And I don't know if you've seen what's going on right here now. There might not be 4 of us to say yes to any one thing. So it's a super majority vote on any changes to our public open space like this.
Well, actually, it's a little bit different. If we vote for 4 new pickleball courts, then we would need a supermajority. If we vote to modify an existing tennis court, which is not materially changing anything in a public park or open space, I believe we just need a simple majority, correct?
You expect me to answer that question?
Yes.
I mean, I don't want to be flippant, but I think you're mincing words. Whether you need 3 or 4, I don't think you got a majority on it either way. I mean, realistically,
I think we could use more time to look at sites, whether it's 2 weeks or a month.
So, okay, so basically, we're putting it off a whole nother year.
Yeah,
No,
if we
really,
do
that's
one
what it's
proposal a
doing.
year, yeah.
Let me modify my motion. Maybe I'll try this. I make a motion to deny restriping and converting the 2 tennis courts as recommended by Planning Commission, but instead instruct the city to see how much and how feasible it would be to put the pickleball courts to the north of it. That would be pickleball standard width and length. So 8 units that would be in addition to the 2. No, that's my motion.
8 units,
Sorry,
8 new
8
pickleball
pick-
courts.
well, we already
You're talking
have-
about $360,000.
Okay, can I ask a question? Can I ask a question? Right now, if we convert those 2 tennis courts, that'll be 8 of them, right?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, space wise, I just wanted to make sure I was okay. You're correct. It is, so maybe we can get a price for 4 and 8, but
So 4 is about 180.
perfect.
8 will be double that.
And then the conversation from there is how we fund it. But basically what I'm
think-
saying is motion is to deny those 2 and look for an option up above.
Would you reconsider to 4 standalone pickleball courts? Because I don't know where we're gonna get the money for 8 standalone pickleball courts. I don't know. I mean, I guess we don't have to do road improvements for the rest of the year. We can get 8 pickleball courts, but
Well,
come
maybe
on.
we can reach out and see if there's some community support. And there's some options out there.
Okay, so you're
potentially.
saying, well,
If we have
okay,
it there and say, this is how much it's gonna cost, this is where we're gonna eventually put it. Maybe there's some fundraising that, I don't know.
so what I want to know is this motion for 8 standalone pickleball courts. Would you be amenable to amending that motion to something similar to 4 if finances dictate? Or are you insistent on having 8 there?
Again, I to some degree, I haven't approved the 4. I'm saying we advise the city to go and lay out the plans and costs and come bring it back to us if we were to put that. So it could be 4. it could be, they could give us 2 options. But that doesn't mean we're also gonna build them this year. We have to find the funds for them, but at least we have a plan moving forward that 1, we're not converting those tennis courts, and 2, when we do put these in, we have a location that we've all agreed upon once we can fund it.
So correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we can stretch and do the funds, but, okay, we've got a motion by Jason Thielen with a modified motion. Are you okay with his modification? Because you
Is that a
seconded the
modified or a
original motion.
substitute?
Or yeah, is that a substitute or a modified motion?
It's probably a substitute motion.
Okay. Are you okay with?
Well,
or
he's
do I
got to
need
get
a
a second.
For
on
the
that.
substitute. Okay, is there a second for the substitute motion? Okay, so the substitute motion fails, so now we're back to the original motion. If there's no further discussion, I guess.
I do have further discussion. If Councilmember Thielen wants to see 8 courts at the cost of 360,000, why don't we do the 4 standalones, flex, only 1 tennis court? What's the cost to flex a court?
It's about what, 50,000?
No, just to flex it.
Oh, flex it. I don't know.
Just.
Yes.
Striping.
Lining them at the most $3,000 to just line them.
Okay, so we could have 6 courts for $163,000, potentially this summer, where we have 30 people just in one church. We're just talking one church. I've been to the one in Highland, and they're also doing that there. And I've been to other ones in Alpine, and they're doing it there. So let's just say there's 100 people in churches wanting to play pickleball this summer. So for $163,000, we could get 6 courts. So would you consider that, Councilmember Thielen? It's just 2 courts less.
Well, if you'd like to amend the
Yeah,
motion for that.
would you could make a substitute motion.
So is that substitution?
Yes, you can make that substitute motion and we'll need a second and we can vote on that.
Okay, so my
Before we-
substitute motion is to do 4 new courts where staff identified to the north of the existing tennis courts, and to take the west court that is closest to the basketball court and turn that, just flex it for $3,000 and get 2 more courts. So for a total of 6 pickleball courts.
So we have a substitute motion. Do we have a second for the substitute motion?
Can you point where those 4 courts are that she's talking about?
To the north.
Austin, can you,
Right there.
there you go.
So we're in the same place.
Right
I
in
said,
that
I
area.
said 4 to 8. You're saying the same thing.
No,
No, you
4.
said 8.
Well, I said they can bring us back options for both 4.
wait, so Austin, I think these were side to side, right? They weren't in a 2x2. As we'd laid it out before. It could be due to the fit.
Just gonna go find that.
Oh, I thought it was a 2x4.
So how are these? You want 4 courts up here, right?
We
Yeah,
have a
in
staff
the
recommendation.
In the packet, right? We had gone 4x1 through there versus 2x2, I believe.
Was it? I thought, no, the 4x1 was up at the other park. I don't believe it was here.
Huh?
I believe here was 2x2
Mhm.
from what I remember.
I'm
So
trying to
just-
find that.
The only 1x4, it was the one that was just recently submitted by a resident.
No, we have, when back last year, when we were originally evaluating locations, staff made a recommendation for this exact area.
And it was 2x2.
Yeah.
So if you just took 2x2 of this and you slid it north, that's what you would be seeing. But we could also say, as per the recommendation that was made from staff originally. I mean, that's how we can.
Okay, so there is a substitute motion on the table. Is there a second? If there's not a second, that substitute motion will also fail. Is there a second? Okay, so the substitute motion also fails. If there's no further discussions or any other substitute motions, we need to vote on the original motion.
Which was Jason's.
Jason,
Original.
Actually,
which
Can you
is to
read that?
deny pickleball courts at Creekside at this point. That was your original motion.
Can Bonnie read that back to us?
Basically to find another location. Bring it back and find another location.
Yeah, in Creekside or anywhere else.
Creekside or another.
basically, we're not determining a location tonight. That's the, just.
Okay. No other motions, no other topics, is that correct? Then we will move on with the vote. All in favor of motion made by Councilman Thielen and seconded by Greg Gordon to deny the restriping of pickleball courts at Creekside. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Hey,
Nay.
So
Passed.
the motion passed. Okay, next item. Item D, approval of Bridle Up Hope Trail easement.
It's way down because of the TSSD.
we will continue with this meeting. If you could move out and keep your conversations out in the far foyer, please.
Is Nicole Hadlock
Yeah,
here?
she's there.
There, okay, I haven't met Nicole.
Hello.
just through email. So,
Okay, Mayor Merrill has asked me to step in for right now. She'll be back in just a moment. We will have this presentation by, who's gonna start us, kick us off?
yeah. Do you want to take a minute and just,
Explain.
we have the grant proposal that you submitted in the packet.
For
and
sure.
Maybe explain to the council
Yeah,
what you're proposing and why,
of
and then we
course.
can go from there.
So Bridle Up Hope has received a grant from the county for a trail that would stay on Bridle Up Hope's property. And we've worked with the trail committee here in Alpine, Breezy. And it would keep our horses kind of on this loop. So Bridle Up Hope has a girls program that focuses on building hope, confidence, and resilience. And we have about 400 students who do lessons there each year. And their last lesson is doing a trail ride where they go on a trail ride with their instructor. So they've been using Bonneville Shoreline Trail and some of those loops, and we have neighbors and closures and things of that nature going on. And so we felt it would be great to have a loop that stayed on Bridle Up Hope's property. And when they agreed to the grant, they wanted an easement with Alpine City so that the funds were available to the public as well. So for this trail that would be hoof and boot. So that's why we're here.
Yeah, and so if you read the cover sheet, this would come from the TRCC funds through the county, and so it has to be a public project. And so when we were approached with this, trying to think of how this could be accomplished, a lot of these trails, they're roughly laid out at the start, but in the end, it might be a totally different alignment because they ran into some obstacle or whatever. And so with not having that detailed design, we had the idea, if the council supports the project, to approach it with a blanket easement on the entire property up front with the temporary construction easement. Let the trail be built. It could be surveyed in place, and then a permanent easement could be described through a legal description. And then the temporary construction blanket easement would go away, and the permanent easement, but it's 20 or 30 feet wide, whatever it needs to be, could be recorded. So it would be a permanent easement on the property. So,
In Shane, so this would always remain their property with just a trail easement, a public
Yes.
trail easement.
yep.
And
that's
what
how it
about the
works.
parking? Was that intended to be public or not? Yeah.
I can comment on that if
Yeah,
you'd
go
like.
ahead.
So the access would be from, there's a parking lot already at the canyon and restrooms there as well. So the main parking would be there at the mouth of the canyon. And then we have 2 easements on the Alpine City already has on either side of our property where they have access to the Bonneville Shoreline Trail to the public as well. And so neighbors could come, you know, just foot traffic could come from the neighborhood and hike up on the trail. But if you were coming with horse trailers or vehicles from outside, it would be that parking at the mouth of the canyon there.
So the Bonneville Trail goes east of this? to-
East and west, so it runs straight through the property. So this would go
Okay.
above it. It would start and end on the Bonneville Shore.
North and
North.
south.
North, yes,
North and south.
yes, north and south, yeah.
Got it.
And that trail already is, there's an easement for the city already on the Bonneville Trail portion of the.
There is
property.
not.
It's just been used.
I remember when we
So-
approved it way back when, it was predicated on that trail easement going in. And I think Mr. Covey at the time says, yeah, we don't have a problem with that. Do you know if it's changed? I mean, that was a while ago, but I was the one who asked that question to him.
So we got an easement. We have that property that you guys use. That's the city property. It's currently in a pasture. There was like an agreement worked
Yeah,
out.
an easement there.
And we got the easement that goes west to east, going up towards the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. And I thought that it also covered the Bonneville Shoreline Trail through your property.
I would have to double check on that.
Can we see
Um,
that visually on Google Maps?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, this is the one that goes from the Pierce property to the Beers property, right? And the trail that's between there is not currently. That was based on the approval, at least through the planning commission, unless something changed at the city council.
Can you put the trail map up? I think we can kind of.
Austin has that. Let me see what I can find here, because we kind of mapped this out.
There, yeah.
Yeah, you can see it going down to the south, it goes a little bit north. Because it has to come through,
Yeah.
where it comes through Preston Drive, drops off Preston, and then comes to the top. The red line is what was supposed to be, the solid red line, what's supposed to be there, it's not there. It flips to the blue, does that make sense? Yeah, right there. And let me say just quickly, I'm not gonna interrupt, because I want them to know I am in favor of this and supporting this as trail. But as I wrote this to try, and I didn't even know it was on the agenda, I just did it because I wanted to know what was happening up there. I realized that isn't there. We stopped back a property from this, and then we have to go straight up to the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. And so we can't access it. So we go up to there from that piece, we have to go back up. Remember, we did it 2 years ago, we put it in from Preston, we put it in the bottom of the ditch. And we went clear there, and we get to Bears. Is that their name?
Beers.
We get to their property and there's a fence. And that's it. And so then you have to go back if you want to go up onto that trail and then out. What you can see, we anticipate, just like what you're saying, Jay, that's exactly what I thought we had, is that line right there, thought we had.
And that's actually always been the case when the Pierces owned it. The same thing was there. It stopped there and stopped on the other side. And it was the one piece that we didn't have that connected them. But when this came to the planning commission, the Coveys mentioned that would be part of the development process and they would approve that connection. So again, I don't know what happened
But they
after
don't
that.
own it, that's the problem.
We don't own that.
See, the problem is it's north of their property, that's what's kind of crazy to me. I thought exactly, I said exactly the same thing.
Yeah, I have to go listen to
And then I
that.
go, wait a minute, we don't have this, but it isn't their ownership, they don't own it. So that's one issue that we gotta figure out somehow. And the other issue is, you see the dotted red line that goes through there? that is really the one. You cannot, on the Bonneville shoreline, put bikes or anything. They can't go on it. They're not allowed on that because it's in the wilderness. So if bikes or that kind of area go through there, they have to be down below that shoreline, okay? That's just one of the things. So that's just another consider. Another consideration I'd like to propose is her parking is great down there, but what we're gonna do by doing that is bring another group of people into the trails, which if they want to have them all there, that's fine. I would suggest so that we look at trying to find a parking area somewhere up in that area that accesses, because we're trying to do something with horses. We got issues with horses now anyway on our trails. And so that's why we want to endorse this, is because this is a great place. Let's get the horses there. Let's have a wonderful experience for them there. Great thing. So I'd like you to consider, and I haven't even told Shane this, I just went and discovered this afternoon, go up Lone Peak Drive, and there's a huge detention basin right across from the Bradshaw's home, and the trail goes right there. But if we
Mike Bradshaw's home?
his parents.
Oh, his parents.
And what if we put in that detention area, some parking there, Shane, and then allow the horses to park, horse trails there, they get on this trail and boom, they're right there. And then it helps keep it contained here, better in the city, centralizes it, creates some better use, because there isn't any parking down by where the blue one goes. We have that trail from Moon Drive up, but you know, they don't have any ability to get parking there, so that.
Yeah.
So, and like I say, that's, if you can see where that is, I was trying hard today, trying to figure out some way to help this thing happen, because I'm in favor of, I just got a concern that I don't have a trail all the way there now. And I bike that orange one, and I'm 10 years older than I was before I started.
And I'm sorry, Lon, just so I understand. So the one that goes above there, was that through the Covey property? The one that's to the east of the one in red?
Yes.
Okay, and that's connected in there, but the one that's on the red is in someone else's property, not on the.
Correct.
Okay.
So we've let people use the Bonneville Shoreline Trail going through Bridle at Pope's
That's,
property.
that might have been what we were talking.
Yes,
about.
so
There-
Kind of two
we
separate
do have
things.
an easement. Austin, if you'll pull this
Okay,
map
that's
up,
what-
I just emailed to you.
On the Bonneville shoreline, we do have an easement.
We do. Yeah.
Donated and we're doing zigzag.
So when Adam Beck with the county attorney's office contacted us to see what we had and what we didn't, we did the research on this to make sure what we had and created this map and sent back to him. So we have essentially this, there you go, essentially this almost T-shaped easement. So we've got the east-west portion and that north-south.
Okay, yes,
So, yeah.
yeah. And this would be for a trail that zigzags up one side, down the other.
Going east of
Yes.
the
Yeah,
Bonneville Shoreline Trail.
correct.
Yeah.
And that, again, just a reminder to the council, that can only be used by walkers or horses. You can't have any biking on it, because bikes aren't allowed. Through their property it is, that's what's so amazing, because it's theirs private, we can bike on there. But once we hit either side of that, we have to be careful, so we don't want to try and get bikers up on that, because then we're creating another issue. So that's why my question is, how do I get that red line to hook where that red line is?
Yeah, and so we'll need to
And I
put
just mean to take
signs
over
No, you're
there.
okay.
your agreement.
You're
I
fine.
just wa-
No
I
worries
wanna
at
help
all.
this thing, and so there's just some things that we can make.
Because bikers will probably use it unless they're notified.
There will
Yeah,
be
they'll-
signs at the
There'll have
bottom.
to be signs.
We'll have those signs put there as well. We also would want the option, and maybe this comes when it's a permanent easement, to close it based off of weather. And Breezy mentioned that as well, that would be a good idea for maintenance, to close it during certain times of the year so that wear and tear is minimal on it.
And
Especially with
that's
horses.
actually an item later on another trail, so.
Yeah.
But that's the city's responsibility, right, to maintain?
We would
Be
maintain
close.
it.
Oh, you'll maintain?
Yes.
It'd be great to have an agreement with them that they maintain.
Yeah, that could be part of the
Okay.
easement. Yeah,
Okay,
and
I'll
we've
make a
planned
motion.
all along. We
Yes.
have,
So we got a motion.
yes.
I'm gonna make a motion to move to accept the temporary construction and eventually a permanent easement for the Bridle of Hope Trail that would allow them to obtain TRCC funds from the Utah County for construction of the trail, and instruct staff and city attorney to work out the details.
I
Okay,
second.
we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
And just that last little part that I put on the cover sheet that we can work out the details. The easement as it's written right now is pretty much in draft form, but if between Craig and I and Bridle Up Hope, if we can It'll essentially be what's there,
Okay, so,
minor tweaks.
I would like to bring it up. We did talk about during the rainy, muddy weather that they have the option to be able to close the trails. Because they won't want their horses on it. They probably don't want other people's horses using it as well. So
okay. So, no,
I
yes,
just wondered, can we make it conditioned on us seeing the agreement again, or is that just, they work it out and they make the
There
wording
will
when
be
they want
another
to
one.
close it and when they won't? Okay.
Yeah, we
Right.
can do that.
We don't,
The temporary easement that we drafted is a draft for them for our review. It's in pretty good form. It expires. So it puts pressure on them. It expires on December 2023. So you have 21 months to finish the job.
Yeah, it should be done in 4 months, so.
Okay, great. That's awesome.
are there any other questions? If there's no other questions, all in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes.
Okay, and I want to make a motion to extend the meeting past 9.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, let's go on to item F. Is that right? So the trail signs restricting uses, so I'm assuming it's gonna be either Breezy or Will.
Yeah, Breezy or Will, do one of you want to present this? And I have it's kind of a crude
Did we
map,
skip
but
the farmer's
Yeah, you
market or
skipped
we-
something.
Yeah, oh,
Oh.
I'm sorry.
They withdrew.
I'm sorry, they withdrew, the petitioner
Oh,
withdrew, so
yeah,
that
sorry.
item is no longer. I'm sorry, I should have said something and I forgot.
Are they coming back? Do you know?
We don't know at this point.
Okay, thanks.
I'll let you know.
they're looking for someone. The lady is now, they had a change of circumstance, their family, they're putting their house up for sale. She hasn't been able to find somebody to take over yet. So if anyone knows someone, they're looking to fill that.
Did we vote on?
I don't think you guys voted.
We didn't vote?
No.
No. Okay, so there's been a motion and a second to extend the meeting. How long?
Till I get finished saying everything I want to say.
15
I
minutes?
don't know when that's gonna be. It might be midnight.
Okay, just say 9:30.
I'll
No,
second.
9:45. The poppies, I want to talk about the poppies.
Okay, but you don't need 30 minutes. Say 9:30,
I'm gonna
please.
talk about every flower. Okay, 9:30. 9:30.
I'll
Okay,
second, yeah.
second, okay. Motion and second to extend the meeting till 9:30. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Jason? Yeah. Okay. Passes. Meeting's extended. Okay. Will or Breezy?
Okay, well, I read through this. This is actually incorrect.
Austin, do you have that map?
Yeah, so what you've been given is actually incorrect of what we talked about. What you have in the motion to approve is not allowing horses, mules, equestrian riders
That's the
from
one I emailed.
November 1 to May 1st. The discussion was having all of the trails that are in the North Mountain closed to equestrian from November 1 to May 1. Forbidden and the upper Three Falls, so when you cross north of Three Falls Drive, Three Falls Trail and the Forbidden Trail are closed to equestrians. It's just too dangerous. We're looking at this as a safety matter. Well, up there, it had the
It
safety, whatever you had.
It's
in
not
your
as
packet.
clear as what he just said.
Yeah, what they have in their packet.
Yeah, it sounds like
Correct,
it's a little.
yes. What we talked about on Monday morning is what,
Yeah,
I
so I
just
think
mentioned.
what we talked about Monday morning, packet went out Friday, is reflected on this fairly crude map. So
okay,
the yellow area would be closed year round, right?
correct.
To equestrian. Yep, that doesn't show up great on here. And then the other area from the lower parking lot up to Three Falls Drive would be November 1st to May 1st.
We even included bodily harm, Vista Ridge. In that. It's pretty much the whole north section of the
So
trails.
no Lambert Park trails in this?
No Lambert Park trails. Shelley and I are actually gonna come up with an
Separate one.
equestrian, not really an equestrian only, but a route, a good route that would be good and suitable for horses.
Right.
But no, because, you know, really a lot of Lambert Park, even in the winter,
Time, yeah.
it's still fairly
Right, but
porous and you don't have issues.
but I am concerned, like, on some of the single track though. I feel like, yes, the horses can be on a lot of the roads because it drains well and they can, you know, it's just not as, the damage won't be as devastating. But if they go on the single track with horses and what, I just don't understand why. I don't think they should be kept out of Lambert Park, but I am concerned about the single track during the wet season in Lambert Park, if that makes sense.
That's why we're gonna come up with a kind of equestrian.
Okay, so what can and what can't.
Equestrian route that's not, you know, we still will allow horses to be on certain parts of Lambert Park. When you get to the north side of Lambert Park is where you have the more wet clay soil. Down in the south, it drains, and I've very rarely seen much horse damage in that lower section of Lambert Park. But we'll work on coming up with a route. It's gonna be.
So can we table this till you have a route? Because I don't know if I'm comfortable just saying, you guys decide where horses will be and not be without us having a little bit of input on that.
I wouldn't even say that's part of this. Is that part of this discussion of having Lambert Park?
No, I'm
It'd
not
be
talking
totally
about
separate.
Lambert Park. I'm just talking about in our overall trails. So if we, since you and your
Shelley.
yeah, haven't had the discussion yet and what that's gonna look like, can we just table it until you have that discussion and then you bring it back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or we could say, can we just please pull a Forbidden and Three Falls trail? We're gonna get the horses off.
Yeah, I agree with that portion of it.
Forbidden in the next week, it's costing me another 50 grand. Go redo that trail. So the damage to the
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I move that the Forbidden and Three Falls trails be closed to, do you want to say horses and mules, or do you want to say equestrian? Horses and mules and equestrian from November 1st to May 1st, and that the trails be signed accordingly.
Okay, the motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jason Thielen, motion by Kelly Law. Any discussion or questions? Not, I'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, and then as far as. So so for the rest of it, if you guys can come back.
Yeah, we'll come. Yeah, that wasn't even on the agenda. That was just a side comment about it, but we'll kind of try to come up with something.
So the motion was to just shut down Forbidden and the North Three Falls trails. As far as the window between November and May 5th, if we could see a comprehensive map of all the trails in Alpine, and then if you could come back
Wait,
with that.
say that again. You want a comprehensive map of all the trails in Alpine, or
Yes,
just Lambert
so
Park?
no, well, because, yeah, what you said today was you wanted to shut down the trails from November 1st to May 1st on all North Mountain, but not Lambert Park, and you're still working on it. But since we didn't vote on the second half of that motion, which is shutting down the trails during the period, we could just do it all together. So if you can work with Shelley on that, and then you guys can come back.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, item G, Lambert Park poppies, preserve and restoration plan. I take it this is you. And please limit your comments to 5 to 7
Put the
minutes.
timer on. So do I need to go over what's been in the packet in detail, or just hit, I guess, the highlights? If you look at the comments from our Chris Merritt, the Utah State Historical Department, and then our own nature center, it's clear that the poppy area is not going to be able to be sustained in its current condition. We have every year now, we have thousands of people that come, and they are vandalizing, damaging the poppies, trampling them, and it's just not at a sustainable state. So I have submitted for some grants that, if approved, that will be a permanent solution to protect and restore the area. But in the meantime, we're up against the bloom season. And so to do something immediately to get them protected, I propose that we do, which was actually our city engineer said, this is going to be the easiest way to do it, is get some temporary fencing and place it around those two areas and put some signage up that this area is under, restoration and revegetation, which is, again, very common in open space and trails to see areas be protected while they regrow and revegetate. So I would like to move forward with getting some temporary fencing in place to get ahead of this upcoming poppy bloom season.
Absolutely. Hey, Jessica, on this left circle, why is it blocking that little path?
So when he did the tour, he actually noted that there's a lot of artifacts in that area, and from the original approach to the house, you can't tell now, but there's a porch and there's some stairs, and it's being trampled. So to kind of bring it to that state where we can look at it and kind of get a vision for what it once was, he suggested that we protect that entire outline.
Yeah, and then in the inner big area here, how will people stay on it? Because when they go through the fence, why don't they go take these little pathways through it? Is it going to be like lined or rocks or?
So the proposal for the grant included, think of it like, it would be more substantial, but something like when you see a golf course, there's courting. We originally thought a boardwalk, but that just felt too invasive and it changed the character of the area too much. I consulted the Albion Basin up in Alta because they've got the same problems trying to manage wildflowers. And so what we're going to do is do the aggregate that we already see in Lambert so that we have a continuity in that area. So the aggregate like in our parking areas to define the trails, and then do the courting. So again, visually, it won't like impact your experience. And those little horseshoes are kind of guiding you for photo ops. So this is the first steps. This is the first steps of what can we do to create longevity. But that's the long-term plan. The short-term plan is just what you see in the highlighted yellow.
Really good work on this. Do we have this fencing, or do we have to purchase it, or what's the story on the fencing? Does anybody know the temporary fencing?
I think we're going to purchase that just orange, not pretty at all, Home Depot-ish.
Could even get, sometimes you can find green.
No, we want something that
So it'll just be
photographers
like-
aren't drawn to.
We want to distract people. I mean, really, to revegetate, we should probably give it a season or two. Don't we need to?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
And
but it's gonna be
so-
minimal
Especially if
cost.
it's right as
fencing.
it is.
Oh,
Yeah.
minimal cost on this
Okay.
end.
Yes.
And the cost if we have the grant approved,
Then,
we'll recoup that.
Yeah, cool.
What's the amount of the grant you're getting?
The grant application was for, Shane, do you remember? I think it was for 45,000.
I don't think I actually saw the final application. I was gonna ask you for a copy of that.
And then
But it
what's
was
the
around
cost
there.
of the new fence you'd be putting in? What's the cost of the trail? What is the cost going to be to do this?
To do the whole thing?
Well,
Yeah,
the
I
only
have
thing
a
that would be done
spreadsheet.
right now is just temporary fence, not the trails, right?
Right,
It
so
just
today
depends.
we're just
I
talking
I
about
understand. I
that
wanted to know
cost.
what the overall, I mean, you're starting a plan, you've got a plan here. What is the costs of the plan?
I'm gonna find it and I will send that to you. I've got a spreadsheet.
Okay.
I think regardless, I like the idea of the temporary fence just to stave off any more erosion of what's there. And if you don't get the grant, we can come up with another plan to do a better job of preserving it.
It gives us time.
So I like it. I'd like to
Yeah.
make a motion.
Go ahead.
I move that a temporary fence be placed around Lambert Park poppies and ruins until permanent fencing can be put in place.
I'll second.
What's the cost of the temporary fence then?
It's 850, it looks like it's about
It's 830 feet,
830
you've got.
feet. So Shane, what do you,
I don't know for sure. I'd say
let me look.
let's just say less than $5,000,
Just T-posts, then you're gonna try and drive in the rock.
probably. I don't know what else to.
We were thinking T-post from a just cost.
Let's say 5,000.
Do you have any other suggestions, Lon, based on that? Like
Yeah. I'd say you get the permanent fence in there.
as soon as possible?
Yeah.
But
We're not gonna get the funding till after the poppy season. The poppies are gonna come, what, end of May, beginning of June usually?
So I suppose this would give you a sort of an idea of what your expensive fence might do for you. I mean, if it doesn't really control and do what you're really expecting it to do, a temporary fence, permanent fence at $40,000 isn't gonna help anymore.
Well, it's a totally different thing. From my understanding, this temporary fence is closing off the entire area. There aren't gonna be openings. People aren't gonna be able to go in there. Not this year. Yes, people can go through, cut through it, you know, like you said. But it's a totally different idea though. Do you know what I'm saying?
I
Like,
hear you.
this
Yeah,
is gonna be
I understand what
completely
you're saying.
blocking access to it for a season or
I
two.
understand what you're saying.
And we have to start somewhere. We've got to start being proactive. I just looked, 100 feet is $100. So you do 8 times that, $800 labor, and then
Plus T-posts.
it'd be well under.
How much are seeds? I've got 10,000 or 100,000 at home.
we may need some seeds.
I am serious. I
Is
was
it
just
the
showing,
Icelandic poppies?
They have to
I
be
can
from
show you.
England.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a quart jar of these little seeds. There's probably 100,000 seeds in it.
Do you get 10,000 people coming to your house to take pictures?
You know what? I'm gonna come and
They
Instagram
do,
your front
Jason.
yard.
On weekends, we have crossing guards and we charge for parking on the public street and the kids serve donuts. It's an awesome event.
Okay, so we had a motion and a second. Did you have anything, any more questions or any other discussion?
The signage needs to be really good to explain kind of what's happening. Because there'll be definitely some calls coming into the city about that.
Yes. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Oh, no, I know. Mom not. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so staff reports. Chiefs? Yeah. You gonna bring breakfast? Austin?
Nothing, thank you.
Craig? Bonnie?
Just a reminder that there's an upcoming Easter egg hunt, 9 AM. And
Oh,
also
10 AM. They changed it to 10 because of the weather. They
Okay,
posted
well,
on
everything
Facebook.
else says 9.
I know, they
So
Uh-oh.
we might want
Did they
to,
not talk to you about that? I saw
They
they
talked to
posted on
Carolyn.
Facebook.
they might,
okay.
yeah, I was gonna say they might want to go ahead and post that. And then also the trail cleanup is on the 23rd Saturday. So
Thank you. Shane?
Okay, construction on the Lambert Park flow trails is going to start very soon, if that hasn't already. There's gonna be some signs up there showing what areas will be closed, and the contractor will actually put signs on either end of this section so people know not to come down on where he's working. So just a heads up on that. The Montdella project down here, the original developer sold it. That guy wasn't successful with it. Now there's a new company that's doing their due diligence and they're very serious about completing it. But there's some things about the architecture, mostly materials that they don't like. So we've instructed them that they need to go through planning commission and then come here to propose those changes. So that will be on the planning commission agenda next week, and we plan for it to be on the city council agenda on the 22nd. Essentially, it's still almost all brick. There's a couple little windows that are actually on the back of the units that have some, they're little pop outs with a window that have some hardy board material. Part of the brick with their proposal is painted. So they're a little bit different look than before, but they are all brick essentially. The little concrete sills and the course above the windows, they're proposing that be brick, not the concrete.
So does that have to go through planning commission again, or how does that work?
Yeah, yeah, that'll go there next week. So they'll have a full 3D rendering of the entire site with all the units. So you'll be able to see what the entire project will look like. So
The planning commission spent a ton of time on that. Judy Pickell kind of led that way back when.
yeah,
Came up with that. They started to build it and changed it up as they went. And you went back and said, no, that's not the look that was approved by the Gateway Committee, Historic Gateway Committee. So they stopped, if I understand correctly, because they were gonna do stucco, some stucco on it and stuff.
yeah, there were some things like that. We noticed some things as they started framing that weren't being done correctly, like the shape of the chimney and a couple things. And so we gave them a stop work order on that first unit that now may end up being torn down because of weather issues and it not being completely dried in.
So the Historic Gateway Committee did it all, but you're saying now they want to change it. I haven't heard any before of someone getting approved by the Historic Gateway Committee. Everything is approved and coming back later and saying, hey, let's go through the Historic Gateway Committee again. I've never heard that before.
It hasn't, but we don't have anything that says they can. So they have to go back through the process to make a change. Which seemed appropriate because the planning commission will still make a recommendation. They might say no.
We don't have to approve it, right?
Right, the city council then has the final say, but in my mind, with that eyesore sitting there for as long as it has, I think there should be some incentive to
Get it done.
help these guys get it done. And they sworn up and down that they're serious, they're ready to come in and knock it out and be done, so. Just my 2 cents. I talked to the original developer. He told me, he said, if I had had any idea that this was going to happen, I wouldn't have sold it to him.
If what was going to happen? Oh, the original.
It was essentially going to sit there for over a year and not really have anything happen and just be an eyesore. So yeah, and they're tied.
They're kind of tied
a little bit because of some power issues, and they're already talking. So hopefully all that will work itself out. Just a heads up on that. So I mentioned the grants already. The roundabout down there, we've done the kind of clean out and tore out the vegetation that we didn't want there, and now we're working on kind of getting some bids to get that installed. So,
And I think we should maybe be sure that we want to put a big sign in there from one direction, or if that's not,
yeah, I wasn't planning to have that as part of the landscape contract anyway. I thought it could come later and it needed more input. And if we do it, what's it going to look like? It would just be the planning and the lighting and sprinklers. So
It just looks really good. I'm like,
yeah,
just mulch it and call it. I mean, it looks great.
yeah, it looks better already.
Yeah, so I don't know, in looking at what we're faced with, I don't know if that's.
Well, and I talked to the landscape architect, said, hey, do you have any ideas? And I've talked to Lon too on recommendations for contractors, and landscape architect, her name just slipped my mind, Ginger, said, well, if you want it done before August, I'd recommend some of these smaller companies. And she gave me 3 names that I'm going to contact. And it's not like a real difficult project. So just have to make sure there's some quality control in place, I think. So we're working on that. The Legacy Park sprinkler should start soon. We're just gonna try with all the kids that come from the charter school. We're gonna try to do it like a section at a time instead of opening all the trenches up, putting everything in a backfill.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
gonna be a mess. So,
And are we planning to do like the flower pots this
so
year?
what
as well?
we've designed in is a valve or more, there might be more than one, that would just run behind the sidewalk that would serve whatever we put in for pots or whatever, so it wouldn't be tied to the rest of the system.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But in terms of getting the pots and the rest, is we can just get that anytime? Or
Yeah,
anywhere?
we need to work on the details of that.
I think we probably need to order those if we want to get it in a timely manner, right?
I'm sure in this market we do, yeah. So if anyone has any ideas of what you want to see,
Something pretty.
get us your input. And then the pressure irrigation lines are being filled. It will be operational by April 15th. It's pretty bleak outlook in parts of the state. I don't know if you saw the news story in Weber Basin. They're telling them from day one, it's 1 day a week. They said they normally get 220,000 acre feet of water from the runoff, and they expect to get 10,000. I think it was 10,000 this year.
Wow.
It was like an unreal number.
Do we know what we're gonna get?
No, I mean, we don't. They
We're not
serve
measuring it.
hundreds of thousands of people and have people that go up and survey all that, but we don't. So, I mean, it doesn't look great. And the warm weather didn't help. Now it's cooled off, but. So,
Okay.
anyway, we'll plug along and make adjustments if we have to in the system. So that's all I have.
Kaylon?
Is there something we can do with the gopher problem up at or in the Bowery?
I talked to 2 different pest control contractors a year or 2 ago, and they all but laughed at me.
Really?
Yeah, they're like, that's
just
major.
Just multiplying by
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have to go up there and till the ground.
Yeah. I mean, we can try it for a year and see if, we notice any different. I can tell you that tilling the ground is not going to do anything.
They're just tilling it for us. I mean,
Yeah.
If it's a natural park, can't we just get like a fox or something?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all, Mayor. So.
Okay, nothing. Kelly? Greg?
Nothing, thanks.
Jason?
7:30 tomorrow, right?
Yes.
Nothing.
I don't have anything either. So if that's all, I'll entertain a motion to.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Adjourned.